At this age, you have explained enough. You have defended enough, apologized enough, and opened your heart too many times to people who only wanted to question it. You have spent years trying to make others understand your silence, your distance, your tiredness, your boundaries, your healing, your decisions, and your need to finally live without being pulled apart by everyone's opinion. But if explaining yourself truly brought peace, why do you still feel heavy after telling the whole story? Why do you still feel judged after speaking honestly? Why do you still feel guilty for choosing calm? Why do you still feel the need to prove that your silence is not pride, your distance is not hatred, and your peace is not selfishness? The truth is, at this age, you no longer owe anyone an explanation for protecting your spirit. You do not owe every person access to your reasons. You do not owe curious people the private details of your pain. You do not owe long speeches to those who only listen so they can twist your words later. Buddhist wisdom teaches that real freedom begins when you stop dragging your soul into every emotional courtroom, when you stop begging to be understood by people who have already chosen misunderstanding, and when you finally realize that silence can be a form of strength, not weakness. There comes a time when you stop living as if approval is oxygen. You stop performing your goodness for people who keep doubting your heart. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who benefited from you having none. You stop correcting every false version of you, answering every accusation, and proving your innocence to people who were never fair judges in the first place. This is not bitterness. This is not coldness. This is not you becoming rude or hard. This is wisdom. This is the quiet moment when your soul finally says, "I have nothing left to prove." Tonight, as you listen to these lessons, something inside you will begin to loosen. The old need to justify yourself will grow weaker. The fear of being misunderstood will lose its grip. The guilt that once controlled your decisions will begin to fade. You will understand that peace does not need permission, healing does not need an audience, growth does not need an announcement, and your life does not need to be defended before people who only disturb it. This is not just a message about silence, this is Buddhist wisdom on freedom. At this age, you no longer owe anyone an explanation. Are you ready? Let's begin. And once you understand that your life does not need to be defended before people who only disturb it, the first freedom you meet is the freedom of silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of weakness, not the silence that comes from being defeated, but the silence that comes when your soul finally stops rushing to explain what your peace has already decided. There is a kind of silence that people fear because they can no longer control what comes out of you. They can no longer pull your pain into the open. They can no longer press the old buttons and watch you react. They can no longer throw a small accusation and receive a full speech from your wounded heart. At this age, silence becomes more than the absence of words. It becomes a locked door. It becomes a calm river. It becomes the place where your peace is protected from people who only came to disturb it. For many years, you may have believed that silence needed an explanation. If you stopped calling, you felt the need to explain. If you became quieter in a room, you felt the need to explain. If you no longer laughed at things that hurt you, you felt the need to explain. If you pulled back from people who drained you, you felt the need to explain. You wanted them to know you were not angry. You wanted them to know you were not proud. You wanted them to know you were not acting strange. You wanted them to understand that something inside you had changed. But here is the question that slowly wakes a tired soul. Why must every change in you be submitted for approval? Why must every quiet season become a public announcement? Why must your silence be defended as if peace were a crime? Why must people receive a full report before they respect your need to breathe? Buddhist wisdom teaches that not every sound is wisdom, and not every answer is freedom. Sometimes speech becomes another chain. Sometimes, the more you explain, the more you feed the very fire you are trying to escape. A person asks why you are quiet, but they are not really asking because they care. They are asking because your silence makes them uncomfortable. It removes the entertainment of your reaction. It removes the power they once had over your emotions. It removes the easy access they had to your inner world. There are people who do not miss your voice because they love your soul. They miss your voice because your reactions used to make them feel important. When you explained, they felt powerful. When you defended yourself, they felt central. When you cried, argued, apologized, or tried to make them understand, they felt in control of the room. But when you become silent, something changes. Their power has nowhere to land. This is why your silence may disturb some people more than your anger ever did. Anger still gives them a conversation. Anger still gives them a fight. Anger still gives them proof that they can move you. But silence gives them nothing to hold. Silence says, you no longer have permission to enter me like before. Silence says, I have heard enough. Silence says, I am not available for this old pattern anymore. And that is where freedom begins. At a younger age, many people believe that being understood is the same as being loved, so they explain everything. They explain their choices, their feelings, their pain, their boundaries, their exhaustion, their healing, their silence. They explain why they said no. They explain why they left. They explain why they changed. They explain why they are tired. They explain why they no longer show up the same way. They open private wounds in front of people who do not even have clean hands. But age teaches you something painful and beautiful. Some people do not misunderstand you because you failed to explain. They misunderstand you because misunderstanding you protects the version of the story where they do not have to change. If they admit they understand your silence, they may also have to admit how much noise they brought into your life. If they admit they understand your distance, they may also have to admit how many times they crossed the line. If they admit they understand your calm withdrawal, they may also have to admit that you did not leave suddenly. You left slowly after being hurt too many times. So they pretend not to understand. They call you cold. They call you difficult. They call you changed. They say, you don't talk anymore. They say, you think you are better now. They say, you have become too proud. But deep down, what they may be feeling is not confusion. It is the loss of control. There is a difference between someone who asks about your silence with love and someone who questions your silence with accusation. Love asks gently. Control interrogates. Love creates space. Control demands access. Love says, I noticed you have been quiet. I hope you are okay. Control says, why are you acting like this? Love waits for the truth. Control demands a performance. You must learn the difference because not every person who asks a question deserves the full answer. Some questions are not doors, they are traps. Some people do not ask so they can understand. They ask so they can argue with your reason. You say you are tired, and they tell you everyone is tired. You say you need space, and they call you selfish. You say you are protecting your peace, and they accuse you of being dramatic. You say you are healing, and they remind you of who you used to be. So, what is the point of giving sacred words to a person who treats every truth like a weapon? This is where silence becomes wise. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally know the value of what you carry. Your emotions are not cheap. Your history is not public property. Your pain is not a courtroom document. Your healing is not a debate. Your quietness does not need to be translated for people who only respect noise. Buddhist wisdom often points us toward right speech. This does not only mean speaking kindly, it also means knowing when speech is unnecessary, harmful, or rooted in attachment. Before you speak, you can ask yourself, is this true? Is this useful? Is this the right time? Is this person able to receive it? Am I speaking from peace or am I speaking from fear? Am I explaining because clarity is needed or am I explaining because I cannot bear being judged? That last question is powerful. Many times we do not defend ourselves because the situation needs it. We defend ourselves because our ego is bleeding. We want to be seen as good. We want to be seen as fair. We want to be seen as kind, mature, innocent, loyal, reasonable. We want to correct the wrong picture someone has painted of us. And sometimes that desire is natural. No one enjoys being misunderstood. No one enjoys being judged unfairly. No one enjoys watching people turn your quiet growth into a false story. But at this age, you begin to see the trap. If you run after every wrong opinion, you will spend your whole life outside yourself. You will become a servant to other people's perceptions. You will abandon your peace just to manage their thoughts. You will keep walking into emotional rooms that your soul has already outgrown. And what does that cost you? It costs sleep. It costs calm. It costs dignity. It costs the soft part of you that wanted to live freely. One careless comment and your whole evening is gone. One accusation and your mind spends hours preparing a speech. One person says, "You have changed," and suddenly you are tempted to explain the years of pain, disappointment, growth, prayer, reflection, and quiet endurance that brought you here. But you do not owe everyone the journey just because they are uncomfortable with the result. Some people only notice your silence after they ignored your words. They did not listen when you were explaining your hurt. They did not listen when you were asking for respect. They did not listen when you were making small requests before your heart became tired. They did not listen when your voice was still soft, hopeful, and open. But now that you are silent, now that you are distant, now that you no longer respond with the same energy, they suddenly want a reason. The reason was there all along. They simply did not value it until access was removed. Silence then becomes a boundary without decoration. It does not shout, it does not insult, it does not chase, it does not beg, it does not explain itself into exhaustion. It simply withdraws energy from places that have proven unsafe. And this withdrawal is not hatred, it is wisdom. It is the soul saying, "I have learned where I can breathe, and I have learned where I cannot." There is a deep peace in no longer defending your quietness. You stop entering every conversation with your hands raised like someone accused. You stop over-explaining your mood. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop answering every message with guilt in your chest. You stop forcing yourself to be cheerful so people will not question you. You stop pretending to be available when your spirit is asking for stillness. And this is not easy at first. The old habit of explaining will fight to come back. When someone says, "You are too quiet," your body may feel pressure to perform. You may want to smile quickly, speak quickly, fix the discomfort quickly. You may want to say, "No, I am fine. I am just tired. Nothing is wrong. Don't worry." Even when something is wrong, even when you are not fine, even when your silence is the only honest thing in the room. Why do we do this? Because many of us were trained to make others comfortable, even at the cost of our own truth. We learned that silence made people suspicious. We learned that boundaries made people angry. We learned that choosing ourselves made people disappointed. So we became skilled at explaining. We learned how to soften our no. We learned how to decorate our distance. We learned how to smile while disappearing from ourselves. But Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to betray your inner peace to keep outer peace. It asks you to look deeply. It asks you to notice suffering where it begins. Sometimes suffering begins not from what people say about you, but from your need to control what they think. Sometimes suffering begins not from being silent, but from believing your silence must be accepted before it is valid. Let this settle in your heart. Your silence is valid even when someone dislikes it. Your rest is valid even when someone questions it. Your boundary is valid even when someone calls it rude. Your healing is valid even when someone wants the old version of you back. Your peace is valid even when no one claps for it. A quiet person is often misread by a noisy world. People may assume silence means weakness, sadness, arrogance, ignorance, or fear. But sometimes silence means discipline. Sometimes silence means maturity. Sometimes silence means, I saw what happened and I choose not to add more suffering. Sometimes silence means, I know my truth and I do not need to throw it at anyone. Sometimes silence means, I have reached a place in life where not every comment deserves my breath. This kind of silence is not empty. It is full of awareness. It is full of restraint. It is full of dignity. It is full of all the words you could say but choose not to, because you now understand that peace is more valuable than winning a pointless argument. There is power in being able to respond but choosing not to. There is strength in feeling the old anger rise and letting it pass without becoming its servant. There is wisdom in hearing someone misunderstand you and not rushing to place your soul in their hands. This does not mean you never speak. It means you no longer speak from panic. You no longer explain from fear. You no longer hand out your energy to every person who knocks on the door of your emotions. Silence gives you time to see clearly. When you stop reacting, you start observing. You notice who becomes angry when they cannot control your response. You notice who respects your quietness and who tries to punish you for it. You notice who cares about your well-being and who only cares about getting access again. You notice who asks with tenderness and who asks with entitlement. This is one of the hidden gifts of silence. It reveals people. Words can hide many things, but silence draws out truth. When you stop over-explaining, some people become gentle. They give you room. They check on you without pressure. They respect your pace. They understand that your quietness may be part of your healing, but others become restless. They provoke. They accuse. They gossip. They push. They say things just to get a reaction. And now you can see clearly who wanted connection and who wanted control. Your silence becomes a mirror. It shows people what they were really attached to. Were they attached to your presence or your obedience? Were they attached to your love or your availability? Were they attached to your truth or your explanations? Were they attached to your soul or the version of you that never said no? This is why no longer defending your silence is not passive. It is deeply active. It is an inner decision to stop feeding confusion. It is a choice to stop giving your life force to conversations that do not heal, repair, clarify, or bring peace. It is a practice of guarding the doorway of your mind. Think of your mind as a small room with a lamp inside. Every argument, every accusation, every unnecessary explanation uses oil from that lamp. If you keep giving oil to people who only bring storms, eventually your own room becomes dark. You wake up tired. You move through the day heavy. You lose your center. You become present in body, but absent in spirit. All because you kept trying to defend yourself in places where peace was never the goal. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows where attachment grows. The attachment here is subtle. It is not attachment to money, praise, or possessions. It is attachment to being understood, attachment to being seen correctly, attachment to having the last word, attachment to making people admit you are not who they think you are. And this attachment can feel noble because it looks like truth. But beneath it, there is often fear. Fear of rejection, fear of shame, fear of being painted wrongly, fear of losing love. But what kind of love requires you to exhaust yourself before it believes you? What kind of relationship needs a full explanation before it respects your silence? What kind of friendship treats your quiet season like an offense? What kind of family bond demands that you keep speaking even when your heart is tired? Real love does not force your soul to perform. Real love can sit beside your silence without trying to break it open. Real love does not always need a detailed reason before it offers compassion. Real love can say, "Take your time." Real love can say, "I am here when you are ready." Real love can say, "You do not have to explain everything for me to care." And when you have experienced enough of the opposite, this kind of love feels almost strange. Peace may feel unfamiliar when you have spent years defending yourself. Calm may feel like danger when your nervous system is used to conflict. Silence may feel like guilt when you were trained to explain every emotion. But with time, you learn that not every quiet space is abandonment. Some quiet spaces are healing. Some quiet spaces are where the soul returns to itself. At this age, you are allowed to become more private. You are allowed to share less. You are allowed to answer slowly. You are allowed to step away from people who treat your emotions like public property. You are allowed to stop explaining your quietness to those who only want to turn it into an argument. You are allowed to let a message sit unanswered until your spirit feels ready. You are allowed to be present without performing happiness. You are allowed to have inner seasons that are not open for discussion. This is important because many people confuse access with love. They think if they love you, they should know everything. They should know why you are silent, why you are tired, why you changed, why you said no, why you left, why you stopped sharing. But love without respect becomes possession. Care without boundaries becomes control. Concern without tenderness becomes pressure. You do not need to punish people with silence. That is not the freedom we are speaking about. Silence used as revenge still keeps you tied to the person. It still says, "I want you to feel my absence." But wise silence is different. Wise silence says, "I am returning to myself." It does not seek to hurt. It seeks to heal. It does not try to make someone suffer. It simply refuses to keep suffering for the sake of being understood. There is a soft dignity in this. You can be quiet without being cruel. You can create distance without hatred. You can stop explaining without becoming arrogant. You can protect your peace without wishing harm on anyone. This is one of the most beautiful forms of freedom because it does not depend on someone else losing. It depends on you finally choosing not to abandon yourself. When a person tries to pull you back into the old pattern, pause. Do not rush. Breathe before you answer. Ask yourself what your words are about to serve. Are they serving peace? Are they serving clarity? Are they serving truth? Or are they serving the old fear of being disliked? Many times, the breath you take before speaking will save you from giving away power you fought hard to recover. You may discover that a short answer is enough. "I need some quiet time. I am not ready to discuss that. I am protecting my peace. I have already said what I needed to say. This is not something I want to explain." These words do not need to be dressed in guilt. They do not need to be followed by a long apology. They do not need a paragraph of emotional proof. Simple truth is still truth. And sometimes no answer is the answer. This may feel uncomfortable, especially if you were raised to respond quickly, explain politely, and keep everyone pleased. But some messages are hooks. Some comments are bait. Some accusations are invitations back into suffering. If you answer every hook, you will spend your life being dragged by people who know exactly where to wound you. Silence can be the moment you stop biting the hook. In Buddhism, there is deep respect for awareness before action. You are not asked to become numb. You are not asked to suppress every feeling. You are asked to see clearly, to see anger as anger, fear as fear, guilt as guilt, attachment as attachment. And once you see clearly, you are no longer ruled as easily. The old reaction may still appear, but you do not have to become it. Someone may provoke you, and the old self may want to defend. The old self may want to write a long message, explain every detail, bring proof, remind them of everything they did, and make them understand exactly why you are quiet now. But the wiser self sees the path ahead. The wiser self knows that some roads only lead back to exhaustion. The wiser self says, "I can speak if it will bring peace, but I do not need to bleed for someone who only wants a reaction." That is freedom. Freedom is not always loud. Sometimes freedom looks like not replying to a disrespectful message. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone with tea and feeling no need to justify your absence. Sometimes it looks like leaving a room without announcing your pain. Sometimes it looks like smiling gently while choosing not to explain what your soul has already released. Sometimes it looks like allowing people to think whatever they want because you no longer worship their opinion. And this freedom becomes stronger with age, because life has taught you the cost of over-access. You have seen what happens when you tell the wrong people too much. You have seen how some people take your honesty and use it as gossip. You have seen how some people take your vulnerability and later throw it back at you. You have seen how some people ask questions not because they care, but because they want material. And after enough years, you begin to understand that privacy is not dishonesty. Privacy is protection. You can be honest and still be private. You can be kind and still be unavailable. You can be loving and still be quiet. You can forgive and still not explain yourself again. These things can exist together. You do not have to choose between being peaceful and being protected. You do not have to choose between compassion and boundaries. A lotus can grow in muddy water, but it does not become the mud. In the same way, you can live among difficult people without letting their chaos enter your heart. Silence helps you remain clean inside. It stops you from saying words that lower you. It prevents you from joining the same bitterness you are trying to escape. It gives your anger time to cool before it becomes calmer. It allows your wisdom to speak only when speech is needed, not when ego is wounded. This is why silence can be a spiritual practice. It is not just closing the mouth. It is training the heart not to chase every disturbance. There will still be moments when you need to speak. Silence is not an excuse to avoid accountability. If you have harmed someone, wisdom asks you to be honest. If clarity can repair something meaningful, speak with care. If a relationship is built on trust, communication matters. But there is a great difference between offering sincere clarity and defending yourself endlessly before someone who has already chosen your guilt. One brings healing, the other drains your spirit. So how do you know the difference? Look at the fruit. Does the conversation bring understanding, repair, and softness, or does it bring more confusion, guilt, accusation, and exhaustion? Do you feel invited into honesty or dragged into defense? Does the person listen to your words or only wait for a weak place to attack? After the conversation, do you feel clearer or do you feel like you have betrayed yourself again? Your body often knows before your mind admits it. The tight chest, the heavy stomach, the racing thoughts, the sudden need to prove yourself, the fear before answering a message, the sadness after every call. These are not small things. They are signals. Your nervous system is telling you what your politeness keeps ignoring. At this age, protecting your silence is also protecting your body. Peace is not only spiritual, it is physical. Constant defense wears the body down. Repeated explaining keeps the mind awake. Emotional arguments leave traces in the muscles, the breath, the sleep, the heart. You cannot live in constant reaction and expect your inner world to remain gentle. That is why your quietness matters. It gives your body permission to stop preparing for battle. It teaches your mind that not every sound needs an answer. It gives your heart a place to rest. It gives your spirit space to remember itself outside of other people's demands. And maybe this is the part that feels most tender. You are not becoming silent because you have no love left. You are becoming silent because you are learning to love yourself too. You are learning that compassion does not mean emotional exposure to everyone. You are learning that patience does not mean tolerating disrespect forever. You are learning that kindness does not mean explaining until you collapse. You are learning that peace is not something you receive after people approve of your reasons. Peace is something you protect by living from wisdom. So when someone questions your silence, you do not have to rush to fill the space. Let the space breathe. Let the discomfort pass through without obeying it. Let the old guilt rise and fall. Let people adjust to the version of you that no longer explains out of fear. Some will not like it. Some will call it pride. Some will say you have changed. Let them. Growth often sounds offensive to people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You have changed. That is the truth. But you did not change into someone cruel. You changed into someone who is tired of abandoning themselves. You changed into someone who knows that words are sacred. You changed into someone who has learned that not every ear deserves your story. You changed into someone who understands that silence can be an act of mercy, because sometimes the words you hold back are heavier than the words you speak. There is beauty in reaching a stage of life where you can sit quietly inside your own truth. No audience, no defense, no announcement, no desperate need for people to see you correctly. Just breath, just awareness, just the calm knowledge that you know who you are, and that is enough. This is the freedom of no longer defending your silence. It is not about becoming unreachable. It is about becoming rooted. It is not about refusing all conversation. It is about refusing unnecessary suffering. It is not about punishing people with distance. It is about no longer offering your peace to those who handle it carelessly. At this age, your silence is allowed to be sacred. Your quietness is allowed to have meaning without explanation. Your peace is allowed to be protected without apology. You do not have to turn every inner shift into a speech. You do not have to prove that you are still kind. You do not have to convince everyone that your silence is not against them. Sometimes your silence is simply for you. And when you finally understand this, the world becomes lighter. You stop carrying invisible court cases in your mind. You stop preparing arguments for people who are not listening. You stop giving your best energy to those who only want your reaction. You stop confusing being heard with being free. You breathe differently, you walk differently, you answer differently, you rest differently, because now you know that your peace does not begin when everyone understands you. Your peace begins when you stop needing everyone to understand before you allow yourself to be calm. So let the silence protect what noise once damaged. Let it cover the parts of you that are still healing. Let it teach you who deserves closeness and who only misses control. Let it return your energy to your own hands. Let it remind you that a quiet life is not an empty life. Sometimes it is the fullest life because it is no longer crowded with unnecessary explanations. At this age, you no longer owe anyone an explanation for your silence. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself rest. You owe yourself the dignity of not reacting to every provocation. You owe yourself the freedom of knowing that what is sacred does not need to be defended before those who cannot honor it. And when your silence no longer needs defense, your soul finally has room to speak in a deeper way. Not through arguments, not through long explanations, not through fear, but through calm choices, steady boundaries, peaceful distance, and a life that says without shouting, "I am free." And when your silence no longer needs defense, another truth rises quietly from beneath it. You begin to see that it was never only silence you were defending. You were defending your right to live, your right to choose, your right to change, your right to rest, your right to walk away from what kept hurting you. And the painful part is this. For years you may have called it explaining, but deep down it was something much heavier. It was asking for permission from people who were never meant to hold power over your peace. There is a kind of explaining that looks innocent from the outside, but inside it feels like kneeling. You say, I just want them to understand. You say, I just want to be clear. You say, I do not want anyone to think badly of me. But beneath those words, your heart may be whispering, please approve of me. Please do not reject me. Please tell me I am allowed to choose myself. Please tell me my life is acceptable to you. And this is where explaining becomes a hidden form of begging. Not begging with your hands stretched out. Not begging for money. Not begging for food. But begging for emotional permission. Begging to be seen as good before you make a decision. Begging to be called kind before you set a boundary. Begging to be understood before you rest. Begging to be forgiven before you have even done anything wrong. And many people live like this for years without realizing it. They think they are being respectful. They think they are being mature. They think they are keeping peace. But slowly their spirit becomes tired because every choice must pass through someone else's reaction before it feels safe. At this age, you must ask yourself a serious question. How many decisions have you delayed because you were waiting for someone else to agree with your peace? How many times did you stay in places that drained you because you could not find the perfect explanation for leaving? How many times did you say yes because explaining your no felt too heavy? How many times did you betray your own tiredness because you feared the disappointment on someone else's face? This is not a small thing. This is how many people lose years of their lives, not through one big mistake, but through thousands of small permissions they kept asking for without using those exact words. They ask permission to rest by over-explaining why they are tired. They ask permission to say no by giving a long list of reasons. They ask permission to change by apologizing for growing. They ask permission to be quiet by explaining their silence. They ask permission to choose peace by making their pain sound serious enough for others to respect. But peace should not need a dramatic story before it is honored. Your no should not need to bleed before it is believed. Your decision should not need to be wrapped in 10 reasons before it is allowed to stand. Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment is one of the roots of suffering, and sometimes the attachment is not to a person's love. It is to their approval. It is to their agreement. It is to their understanding. It is to that small nod that says, "Fine, you are allowed." But the moment your peace depends on that nod, you have handed over your freedom. You may still be walking around like an adult, but emotionally, you are waiting at someone else's door. This is why over-explaining feels so exhausting. It is not only the words that drain you, it is the position you take inside yourself while speaking. You shrink. You soften your truth too much. You make your pain sound polite. You make your boundary sound temporary. You speak as if your decision is still open for negotiation. You give reasons, then more reasons, then examples, then apologies, then emotional proof. And the more the person questions you, the more you give away. By the end, you may not even recognize your own truth anymore. What began as a clear decision becomes a weak request. What began as a boundary becomes a debate. What began as self-respect becomes a performance. And somewhere inside, your soul knows it. That is why you feel heavy afterward, not because you spoke, but because you abandoned your own authority while speaking. There is a deep difference between explaining from clarity and explaining from fear. Clarity speaks once and stands. Fear speaks again and again, hoping the other person will finally become gentle. Clarity says, "This is my decision." Fear says, "Please understand why I had to make this decision." Clarity respects the listener, but does not worship the listener. Fear studies the listener's face, tone, silence, and reaction, trying to find safety. Clarity is clean, fear is tiring. Many people who over-explain were not born that way. They were trained into it. Maybe you grew up around people who punished your honesty. Maybe you were made to feel guilty for having needs. Maybe every no became an argument. Maybe every boundary was treated like betrayal. Maybe you learned that love became safer when you gave reasons quickly. So you became an expert at defending your own existence. Before anyone accused you, you explained. Before anyone rejected you, you apologized. Before anyone misunderstood you, you tried to control the whole story. And for a time, this may have helped you survive. It may have kept certain people calm. It may have reduced conflict. It may have made you seem easy, kind, loyal, humble, and agreeable. But what once protected you can later imprison you. A habit formed in fear does not automatically become wisdom just because you are older. You must look at it honestly and ask, is this still protecting me, or is it now keeping me small? At this age, freedom begins when you stop confusing peacekeeping with self-erasing. Keeping peace should not mean disappearing from your own life. Being kind should not mean giving everyone a vote over your decisions. Being respectful should not mean explaining until your spirit is tired. There is nothing noble about constantly shrinking so others do not feel uncomfortable with your growth. Some people will not accept your first explanation because they do not want clarity, they want control. They keep asking why, not because they are confused, but because they are looking for a weak place in your decision. You say, I cannot come. They say, why? You explain. They challenge the explanation. You explain again. They suggest another option. You defend yourself. They bring guilt. You apologize. Before you know it, you are no longer making a decision. You are trying to win permission. This is how a simple choice becomes an emotional courtroom. You stand there presenting evidence for your own life. You bring proof of your tiredness, proof of your pain, proof of your good intentions, proof that you are not selfish, proof that you are not rude, proof that you still care. But a person who wants control will never say, thank you, that is enough evidence. They will keep moving the line because the goal was never understanding. The goal was to make you surrender. Buddhist wisdom invites you to step out of this pattern, not with anger, not with pride, not by becoming harsh, but by returning to awareness. You notice the moment your explanation begins to turn into begging. You notice the shift in your body, the tight chest, the fast words, the need to be believed, the fear of disappointing someone, the sudden urge to overprove your goodness. That is the moment to pause. That is the moment to breathe. That is the moment to remember, I am allowed to live without being approved by everyone. This does not mean you become careless with people. It does not mean you make decisions that affect others and refuse to communicate. It does not mean you hide behind silence when honesty is needed. Buddhism is not teaching you to become cold. It is teaching you to stop being ruled by craving, and approval can become a craving. Being liked can become a craving. Being seen as innocent can become a craving. Being understood by everyone can become a craving. And every craving creates suffering when life does not give you what you demand. The craving for approval is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as goodness. You may think, I just do not want to hurt anyone. But sometimes what you really mean is, I do not want anyone to be upset with me. Those are not the same. Not wanting to hurt people is compassion. Needing everyone to be pleased with you is bondage. Compassion moves with wisdom. Bondage moves with fear. A compassionate person can say no gently. A bound person says yes resentfully. A compassionate person can explain simply. A bound person explains endlessly. A compassionate person cares about others without abandoning themselves. A bound person sacrifices themselves and calls it love, then wonders why they feel empty. This is why you must become honest with your own motives. When you explain, ask yourself, am I offering clarity or am I trying to purchase approval? That question can change your life, because once you see the difference, you can no longer lie to yourself as easily. You begin to hear the hidden begging inside long explanations. You begin to notice when you are not speaking from truth, but from the fear of being disliked. There are people who only respect you when you are easy to control. The moment you choose yourself, they call you selfish. The moment you stop explaining, they call you rude. The moment you stop apologizing for your boundaries, they say you have changed. And yes, you have changed, but not in the way they think. You have stopped kneeling. You have stopped asking them to bless the life that belongs to you. This is where many people feel guilty, because they have spent so long being approved for self-abandonment that self-respect feels like wrongdoing. When you finally stop explaining, your body may feel fear. When you give a short answer, you may feel rude. When you say, "I cannot do that," without giving 5 reasons, you may feel cold. When someone is disappointed and you do not rush to fix it, you may feel cruel. But this discomfort does not always mean you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it means you are doing something new. Growth often feels like guilt at first because your nervous system is used to old roles. If your old role was to please, freedom will feel dangerous. If your old role was to explain, simplicity will feel disrespectful. If your old role was to keep everyone comfortable, boundaries will feel like betrayal. But do not confuse the pain of change with the presence of wrongdoing. Buddhist practice is not only about sitting quietly, it is also about watching the mind as it tries to drag you back into old suffering. The mind says, "Explain more." The heart says, "They may hate you." The body says, "Fix this quickly." The old self says, "You cannot let them think badly of you." But awareness says, "Let me see clearly before I obey." That small pause is powerful. That small pause is where freedom enters. You may begin with simple words. "I have made my decision. I am not available for that. I understand you feel differently. I do not want to discuss this further. I have already explained what I can." These words may feel too short at first. You may feel tempted to add more, but let them stand. Let your truth learn to stand without decoration. Because every unnecessary sentence can become a doorway back into negotiation. You say, "I am not coming because I am tired." Then they say, "You can rest later." Now you feel forced to explain the kind of tiredness you mean. You say, "I need space because I have been overwhelmed." Then they say, "Everyone is overwhelmed." Now you feel forced to prove your pain is real. You say, "I am choosing myself." Then they say, "So you do not care about us." Now you feel forced to defend your love. Sometimes the wisest explanation is the simplest one. "This is what I need." Not because the other person will like it, but because your peace does not have to win a debate before it can exist. There is a quiet dignity in not turning every decision into a public trial. You do not need to explain why your energy has changed to people who drained it. You do not need to explain why you are resting to people who benefited from your exhaustion. You do not need to explain why you are no longer available to people who only valued your availability. You do not need to explain why you are choosing peace to those who only recognize love when it comes with self-sacrifice. At this age, you must stop making your life a group decision. Advice can be useful. Honest conversation can be beautiful. Wise counsel can save you from blindness. But approval addiction is different. Approval addiction makes you unable to move unless someone says your movement is acceptable. It makes you feel wrong even when your heart is clear. It makes you treat other people's disappointment as a command. It makes you believe your own inner knowing is not enough. Buddhist wisdom calls you back to inner seeing, not selfish impulse, not reckless emotion, not stubborn pride, inner seeing, the calm place beneath fear where you know what is true, the quiet wisdom that says, this path is no longer healthy, the soft certainty that says, I cannot keep giving myself away, the clear awareness that says, I have outgrown this pattern. When that awareness is present, you do not need to beg the world to agree. But you must also understand why begging for approval becomes so addictive. Approval gives a quick relief. When someone says, okay, I understand, your body relaxes. When someone says, you are right, you feel safe. When someone says, I am not upset, you feel forgiven. So the mind starts chasing that relief again and again. It becomes like needing a small dose of comfort from outside yourself before you can feel steady inside yourself. The problem is, outside comfort is unstable. Today they approve, tomorrow they judge, today they understand, tomorrow they twist the story, today they praise your growth, tomorrow they resent your boundary. If your peace depends on their reaction, your peace will rise and fall like a leaf in the wind. Freedom means building a steadier place inside. It means being able to say, I hope they understand, but I will not abandon myself if they do not. It means being able to say, I care about their feelings, but I am not owned by their feelings. It means being able to say, I can listen without surrendering my truth. This is maturity. This is balance. This is the middle way between harshness and self-betrayal. The middle way matters. Some people hear messages about not explaining and turn them into arrogance. They become hard. They refuse all accountability. They say, I do not owe anyone anything, while leaving damage behind them. That is not wisdom. That is ego wearing the clothes of freedom. Buddhist freedom is not careless. It does not use peace as an excuse to avoid kindness. It simply refuses to make approval the master of your life. So when you have truly caused harm, speak. Apologize without making yourself the victim. Take responsibility without drowning in shame. Repair where repair is possible. That kind of explanation is not begging. It is integrity. But when you are simply making a choice that protects your health, your peace, your time, your energy, or your growth, you do not need to keep pleading until everyone is satisfied. There is a major difference between responsibility and emotional permission. Responsibility says, my actions affect others, so I will communicate with care. Emotional permission says, I cannot act unless others approve of my choice. Responsibility is mature. Permission-seeking is bondage. Responsibility keeps love clean. Permission-seeking turns love into fear. The older you become, the more precious your remaining energy becomes. You no longer have endless strength for useless explanations. You no longer have endless years to spend convincing people you deserve to live peacefully. You no longer have to waste entire nights replaying conversations that should have ended after one honest sentence. Life becomes too sacred for that. Breath becomes too sacred. Sleep becomes too sacred. The heart becomes too sacred. You begin to ask better questions, not how do I make them understand, but why do I need their understanding so badly? Not how do I explain this perfectly, but why am I afraid of being disliked? Not how do I prove I am right, but can I remain peaceful even if they think I am wrong? These questions are not easy. They cut deep, but they lead to freedom. Because the real prison is not always the other person. Sometimes the prison is the belief that you cannot be free until they approve of your freedom. That belief can keep you trapped long after the person has left the room. They may not even be thinking about you, yet you are still arguing with them in your mind, still preparing your defense, still rewriting your explanation, still hoping one day they will finally see your heart clearly. But what if they never do? Will you postpone your peace forever? Will you wait another 5 years? Another 10? Will you stay emotionally kneeling because someone refuses to understand what your soul already knows? There comes a time when you must bless yourself to move forward, not in arrogance, but in peace. You place your hand on your own heart and say, I know my intention. I know what I have survived. I know why I must choose differently now. I do not need to keep begging for approval from people who are not living inside my body, carrying my memories, or paying the price of my exhaustion. This is not selfish. This is honest. Other people may have opinions about your choices, but they do not have to live with the consequences in your nervous system. They do not lose sleep in your bed. They do not carry the tightness in your chest. They do not feel the quiet sadness you feel after betraying yourself. They do not wake up in your life. So why should they hold final authority over it? Buddhist wisdom brings you back to direct experience. You look at your suffering, you look at its cause, you look at the possibility of freedom. Then you walk the path. If explaining yourself again and again creates more suffering, you must be brave enough to see it. If needing approval keeps you trapped, you must be honest enough to name it. If your desire to be liked is stronger than your desire to be free, you must sit with that truth without shame and begin again. No shame is needed. You learned this pattern somewhere. You learned to explain because you wanted love. You learned to justify because you wanted safety. You learned to seek approval because being rejected hurt too much. So do not hate the part of you that begged. That part was trying to protect you. But now you can teach it a new way. You can tell it, we are safe enough to stop pleading now. We can be kind without kneeling. We can speak without surrendering. We can choose without asking the whole world to bless us. This is how healing becomes practical. It is not only a beautiful thought, it shows up in the next conversation, the next message, the next invitation, the next accusation, the next moment someone asks for more access than they deserve. You practice by pausing. You practice by speaking simply. You practice by not adding unnecessary proof. You practice by surviving someone else's disappointment without rushing to fix it. You practice by letting your decision remain your decision. At first, people may test you, especially those who benefited from the old version of you. They may push harder. They may say, you never used to be like this. They may bring up your past kindness as if it were a contract for future self-abandonment. They may use guilt. They may use silence. They may use anger. Let their reaction teach you. A person who only respects your boundary when it comes with an apology never respected your boundary. They only tolerated your discomfort because it kept them comfortable. Do not be surprised when your freedom disappoints people who preferred your fear. Do not be shocked when your short answer offends those who were used to long explanations. Do not panic when someone mistakes your self-respect for pride. Their discomfort is not always evidence of your wrongdoing. Sometimes it is evidence that the old arrangement has ended. And when that old arrangement ends, something beautiful returns to you. Energy, clarity, time, breath. You no longer spend half your life preparing emotional speeches. You no longer write messages you delete 10 times. You no longer explain your boundaries as if they are fragile things begging to be accepted. You no longer feel responsible for managing every mood around you. You begin to live from the inside out. This is the quiet power of no longer begging through explanations. You become simpler, not shallow but clear. You speak with less fear. You choose with less guilt. You listen without being swallowed. You love without becoming a servant. You care without handing over the keys to your peace. And people who truly love you will adjust. They may not always understand immediately, but they will not require you to suffer before they respect you. They will not make your boundary a personal insult. They will not demand a full performance before offering basic kindness. They will learn the new rhythm of your life because they value your well-being more than their control. The ones who only wanted control may drift away. Let them. It is painful, yes, but it is also revealing. When you stop begging, you discover which relationships were built on mutual respect and which were built on your compliance. This discovery may hurt, but it also cleans your life. It shows you where peace can grow and where it kept being stepped on. At this age, you are not here to win every emotional case. You are not here to convince every person that your choices are valid. You are not here to keep kneeling before approval until your knees forget what standing feels like. You are here to live with awareness. You are here to choose with wisdom. You are here to protect the calm that took you years to find. So let your explanations become lighter. Let your words become cleaner. Let your yes be honest. Let your no be peaceful. Let your silence be respected by you first. Let your choices rise from your inner knowing, not from the fear of someone's reaction. And when you feel the old need to beg for approval returning, breathe. Feel your feet on the ground. Come back to yourself. Remember that you are not a child asking for permission to exist. You are a soul learning to live freely. You can still be gentle. You can still be loving. You can still be humble, but you do not have to kneel. You do not have to keep turning your life into an explanation. You do not have to convince people to approve of the peace they did not help you build. At this age, explaining yourself should not feel like begging for the right to breathe. Your life is not a request. Your peace is not a proposal. Your boundary is not an apology waiting to be accepted. Your healing is not a debate. And your freedom does not begin when others finally understand. It begins the moment you stop asking them for permission to live. And once you stop asking people for permission to live, another layer of freedom begins to appear. You start noticing how much of your life was not only spent explaining yourself, but performing yourself. Performing your kindness, so no one would call you cruel. Performing your loyalty, so no one would call you selfish. Performing your maturity, so no one would call you difficult. Performing your goodness, so people who had already judged your heart would finally say, "Now I believe you." But at this age, you begin to understand something that can save your spirit from years of quiet exhaustion. Peace and performance cannot live in the same body for long. There is a pain that comes from being good to people who still treat you like you are guilty. You keep smiling, keep proving, keep showing up, keep forgiving, keep softening your words, keep explaining your intentions, hoping that one day they will finally see your heart clearly. But what happens when they do not want to see clearly? What happens when they have already chosen the version of you that makes their story easier to tell? What happens when your kindness becomes a stage, your patience becomes a costume, and your loyalty becomes a performance for people who are not even watching with honest eyes? This is where many tired souls lose themselves, not because they are bad people, but because they are trying too hard to be seen as good. They begin to live in a way that is no longer guided by peace, but by the fear of being misunderstood. They do not ask, "What is true?" They ask, "How will this look?" They do not ask, "What protects my spirit?" They ask, "Will they think I am selfish?" They do not ask, "What is the wise thing to do?" They ask, "How can I make sure nobody is upset with me?" And slowly, life becomes a performance. Not the loud kind with lights and applause, but the quiet kind that happens in the heart. You perform being okay when you're tired. You perform being available when you need rest. You perform being forgiving when your pain has not even been acknowledged. You perform being mature by swallowing words that should have been spoken with calm truth. You perform being loyal by staying close to people who have not been loyal to your peace. You perform being kind by abandoning your own boundaries so no one can accuse you of becoming cold. But Buddhist wisdom gently asks, who is watching, and why have you given them so much power? There is a sacred boundary between peace and performance. Peace comes from alignment. Performance comes from fear. Peace says, I know my intention and I will act from awareness. Performance says, I must make sure they see my intention correctly. Peace moves quietly. Performance keeps checking the audience. Peace can be misunderstood and still remain steady. Performance collapses when applause is missing. Peace is rooted in truth. Performance is rooted in image. At this age, you can no longer afford to live for image. Not because reputation means nothing, but because your soul is too precious to be controlled by people who are committed to misreading you. There are people who will call your boundary an attitude. They will call your silence pride. They will call your healing distance. They will call your self-respect selfishness. They will call your calmness coldness. And if you are not careful, you will spend the rest of your life trying to prove that they are wrong. But how much proving will be enough for someone who benefits from misunderstanding you? Some people need you to be the problem because it protects them from looking at their own behavior. If they admit you are peaceful, then they may have to admit they were the source of chaos. If they admit you are mature, then they may have to admit they were unfair. If they admit your boundary is reasonable, then they may have to admit they crossed it. If they admit your silence is healing, then they may have to admit they kept hurting you even after you spoke. So they hold on to a false version of you, not because the truth is hidden, but because the truth is inconvenient. And if you keep performing for such people, you are not trying to bring light anymore. You are trying to decorate a room they have decided to keep dark. This is why you must learn to stop auditioning for people who have already rejected your truth. You do not need to keep showing them how kind you are. You do not need to keep proving your maturity. You do not need to over-display loyalty. You do not need to make your pain look pretty so they will respect it. You do not need to keep acting calm just to avoid being called dramatic. Real peace is not a show. Real wisdom is not a performance. Real kindness does not need to kneel before someone's suspicion. There is a kind of maturity that people praise because it keeps you silent for their comfort. They say, be the bigger person, but what they sometimes mean is, do not hold anyone accountable. They say, let it go, but what they sometimes mean is, do not disturb the person who hurt you. They say, you are mature, but only when your maturity benefits them. The moment your maturity includes a boundary, they call it pride. The moment your peace includes distance, they call it disrespect. The moment your kindness includes self-protection, they call it selfishness. This is why you must be careful about living for labels. If you live to be called mature, people can control you by threatening to call you childish. If you live to be called kind, they can control you by accusing you of being cruel. If you live to be called loyal, they can control you by saying you abandoned them. If you live to be called peaceful, they can control you by saying you changed. Every label you hunger for becomes a chain in the hands of someone who knows how to pull it. Buddhist wisdom teaches a different path. It teaches you to act from awareness, not from hunger. To do good because goodness is your path, not because you need witnesses. To be kind because kindness keeps your heart clean, not because you are trying to win approval. To be patient because anger would poison you, not because you are afraid of being judged. To set boundaries because wisdom requires it, not because you want to punish anyone. When your actions come from awareness, you no longer need constant validation. You become less interested in looking good and more interested in being free. This is difficult for people who have spent years being misunderstood. When you have been judged unfairly, the desire to prove yourself can become very strong. You want to show them they were wrong. You want them to feel ashamed for misreading you. You want them to finally say, I see now. You were not the person I thought you were. And yes, that desire is human. It comes from pain. It comes from the deep wound of not being seen. But the question is, how long will you keep living on a stage built by your pain? Some people are still performing for parents who never affirmed them. Some are performing for siblings who always compared them. Some are performing for partners who made them feel hard to love. Some are performing for friends who gossip but smile. Some are performing for children who only notice their sacrifices when they stop making them. Some are performing for a whole community that never knew the private battles behind their public calm. And the tragedy is this: the audience keeps changing, but the performance remains. You leave one judgmental person and find another. You escape one critical room and enter another. Not because you love suffering, but because the inner habit has not changed. The real audience is no longer outside. It is inside your own mind. It is the voice that says, "Be careful, do not look selfish. Do not disappoint them. Do not let them think badly of you. Do more, explain more, smile more, stay longer, give more." At this age, you must gently challenge that voice. You must ask, who taught me that I must be acceptable to be safe? You must ask, why do I believe my goodness needs a witness? You must ask, why do I feel guilty when I stop performing? These questions may feel uncomfortable, but they open the door to freedom. Because the sacred boundary between peace and performance is not only about other people, it is about the place inside you where you stop acting and start living truthfully. It is the place where you no longer need to look calm while you are breaking. You no longer need to look generous while you are empty. You no longer need to look strong while you are silently asking for rest. You no longer need to look forgiving while your heart still needs time. You no longer need to look available while your soul is begging for space. Peace begins when your outer life stops betraying your inner truth. There is a powerful honesty in saying, "I cannot do that right now." There is wisdom in saying, "I need time." There is dignity in saying, "I care, but I cannot keep giving from an empty place." There is maturity in saying, "I will not pretend this is okay." These are not cruel sentences. They are clean sentences. They do not attack. They do not beg. They do not perform. They simply stand. People who are used to your performance may not like your honesty at first. They may miss the version of you who smiled through pain. They may miss the version of you who answered quickly. They may miss the version of you who carried every burden quietly. They may miss the version of you who said yes before checking your own heart. But missing that version does not mean that version was healthy. Sometimes people miss the you who was easiest for them, not the you who was most alive. This is a hard truth, but it is freeing. The version of you that everyone praised may not be the version of you that was at peace. They praised your patience while you were swallowing hurt. They praised your strength while you were exhausted. They praised your loyalty while you were being neglected. They praised your kindness while you were afraid to say no. They praised your maturity while you were carrying pain silently so no one else would feel uncomfortable. But praise is not always proof that you are living wisely. Sometimes praise is only proof that your self-abandonment was useful to someone. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become hard in response to this. It asks you to become awake, to see clearly, to notice where you are acting from compassion and where you are acting from fear, to notice where kindness is natural and where kindness is being forced as a mask, to notice where patience is wise and where patience is only delayed self-betrayal, to notice where loyalty is love and where loyalty is attachment to an old role. When you see clearly, you can choose differently without hatred. You can say no without becoming bitter. You can step back without wanting revenge. You can stop performing without becoming careless. You can remain soft, but not easily used. This is the balance many people never learn. They think the only choices are to be endlessly giving or completely cold. But there is a middle path. You can be warm and boundaried. You can be kind and honest. You can be peaceful and firm. You can be compassionate and unavailable for disrespect. This is the sacred boundary. It is not a wall built from anger. It is a line drawn from wisdom. It says, I will not use my goodness as a costume. I will not turn my maturity into a prison. I will not prove my loyalty to people who keep wounding my peace. I will not perform kindness in places where truth is required. One of the most painful performances is the performance of being unaffected. Someone hurts you, and you act like it did not matter. Someone ignores your needs, and you tell yourself not to be sensitive. Someone speaks to you with disrespect, and you laugh it off because you do not want to look difficult. Someone takes and takes, and you keep giving because you do not want to be called selfish. But your body knows, your heart knows, your sleep knows, your silence later knows. Pain does not disappear because you perform peace. It hides, it settles into your chest, it becomes tiredness, it becomes resentment, it becomes distance, it becomes quiet sadness, it becomes the strange feeling of being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. This is why performing peace is not the same as having peace. Performing peace is a mask. Real peace is a state of alignment. To perform peace, you must suppress truth. To live in peace, you must honor truth. To perform peace, you avoid discomfort. To live in peace, you face discomfort with awareness. To perform peace, you keep everyone else calm while you suffer inside. To live in peace, you stop making your inner world the sacrifice for outer appearances. This is important because many people confuse spirituality with performance. They think being spiritual means never being upset, never setting boundaries, never walking away, never saying no, never disappointing anyone. They think peace means always being soft, always being available, always smiling, always forgiving instantly. But that is not wisdom. That is a costume. True spiritual growth does not turn you into a person without limits. It turns you into a person who sees clearly enough to stop feeding suffering. Even the gentlest heart needs boundaries. Even the calmest person needs rest. Even the most forgiving soul needs space. Even the kindest person has the right to stop standing where they are repeatedly wounded. A peaceful person is not someone who allows everything. A peaceful person is someone who no longer reacts blindly but still chooses wisely. This is where many people misunderstand Buddhism. They think non-attachment means not caring. They think compassion means allowing harm. They think patience means staying forever. But Buddhist wisdom is not asking you to become a doormat. It is asking you to stop clinging. Sometimes that means letting go of anger. Sometimes it means letting go of the need to be praised. Sometimes it means letting go of the identity of being the good one in every story. Sometimes it means letting go of people who only loved your performance, not your truth. That last one can hurt deeply, because when you stop performing, some relationships may weaken. Not because love disappeared, but because the role you played was holding everything together. You were the one who always explained, always apologized, always reached out, always fixed the mood, always carried the silence, always made yourself smaller so others did not have to grow. When you stop doing that, the relationship may reveal its true shape, and you must be brave enough to see it. A relationship that only survives when you perform is not resting on love alone. It may be resting on habit, guilt, fear, convenience, or control. Real connection can survive honesty. Real love can handle a boundary. Real care can adjust when you stop pretending. Real respect does not require you to exhaust yourself to remain acceptable. This is why letting go of performance brings both grief and relief. Grief because you realize how much of yourself you gave away. Relief because you no longer have to keep giving yourself away. Grief because some people may not know what to do with the real you. relief, because the real you finally has air. At this age, you cannot keep living as a version of yourself designed to calm other people's opinions. You cannot keep dressing your truth in soft clothing so no one feels challenged by it. You cannot keep proving you are good to people who keep moving the standard. First, they want kindness. You give kindness. Then they want silence. You give silence. Then they want access. You give access. Then they want agreement. You bend. Then they want apology. You apologize. Then they want the old you back. And if you keep obeying, there will be no you left. Your soul was not given to you, so it could become a decoration for other people's comfort. Your life is not a stage for endless approval. Your goodness is not something you must act out until suspicious people are satisfied. Some people will distrust you no matter how carefully you live. Some will twist your words no matter how gently you speak. Some will question your loyalty no matter how often you show up. Some will accuse your boundaries no matter how kindly you set them. Let them meet the truth without your performance. This does not mean you become careless with your character. Character matters, integrity matters, how you treat people matters. But character is not the same as image management. Integrity is what you do because it is right. Performance is what you do so people will call you right. Integrity can stand alone. Performance needs witnesses. Integrity brings inner peace. Performance brings temporary approval followed by deeper exhaustion. So ask yourself, who am I when no one is clapping? That is where your real spiritual work begins. Are you kind when no one praises you? Are you honest when no one rewards you? Are you peaceful when no one notices? Are you loyal to truth, not just to being seen as loyal? Are you generous without needing to be called generous? Can you set a boundary and still know you are a loving person, even if someone calls you selfish? This is where freedom becomes real, not when everyone sees your goodness, but when you no longer need everyone to see it before you trust it yourself. Many people are trapped because they do not believe in their own heart unless someone confirms it. If others call them kind, they feel kind. If others call them selfish, they panic. If others call them mature, they feel safe. If others call them difficult, they collapse into self-doubt. Their identity rises and falls on the words of people who may not even know themselves clearly. That is a painful way to live. Buddhist wisdom brings your attention back inward. It asks you to know your mind, to know your intention, to know whether you are acting from greed, fear, anger, pride, compassion, wisdom, or peace. This inner honesty is more important than public approval, because people can praise you while you are acting from fear, and people can criticize you while you are acting from wisdom. The crowd is not always a reliable guide. There are times when the wisest thing you do will be misunderstood. There are times when the kindest thing you do will disappoint someone. There are times when the most peaceful choice will look rude to people who expected access. There are times when your growth will be called betrayal by those who benefited from your old wounds. If you cannot survive being misread, you will keep returning to the prison of performance. You must learn to let your inner witness become stronger than the outer audience. The inner witness is the calm part of you that knows when you are living honestly. It does not shout, it does not flatter, it simply sees. It knows when your yes is real. It knows when your no is necessary. It knows when your silence is wise. It knows when your kindness is clean. It knows when you are acting from love and when you are acting from fear. The more you listen to this inner witness, the less you need to perform. This is not easy because performance often gives quick rewards. People may smile when you say yes. They may praise you when you overgive. They may call you strong when you hide your pain. They may call you easy to love when you have no boundaries. But quick rewards can lead to long suffering. The applause fades and you are left with yourself. The praise ends and your body still carries the cost. The room goes quiet and your soul asks, "Why did you leave me again?" Do not ignore that question. It is sacred. It is the part of you that still believes you can come home to yourself. Coming home to yourself means living with fewer masks. It means saying what is true without turning it into a performance. It means giving from fullness, not fear. It means resting without guilt. It means allowing your goodness to exist quietly without needing to be displayed. It means letting your maturity show through your choices, not through your willingness to suffer silently. It means allowing your loyalty to include loyalty to your own peace. This kind of life may look less impressive from the outside, but it feels cleaner inside. You may not be praised as much. You may not be called the strong one as often. You may not be everyone's first call when they need someone to carry their burdens. You may not be invited into every emotional storm, but you will sleep better. You will breathe better. You will stop feeling like your life is being spent managing reactions. You will begin to feel the quiet joy of belonging to yourself. And when you belong to yourself, you can love others more honestly, not with the hidden resentment of someone who gives too much, not with the fear of someone who needs approval, not with the tired smile of someone performing goodness, but with clean hands, with a clear heart, with the ability to say yes when yes is true and no when no is wise. That is real kindness. That is mature love. That is peace without performance. There is something deeply powerful about a person who no longer tries to look good in every story, not because they do not care about their character, but because they understand that some stories will be told by wounded mouths, jealous hearts, confused minds, and people who only know fragments. They understand that trying to correct every story would cost the peace they are trying to protect. They understand that their life must be lived, not constantly advertised. So they stop proving, they stop performing, they stop begging through goodness, they stop offering loyalty as evidence in someone else's court. They stop using kindness as a shield against criticism. They stop treating maturity as silence in the face of disrespect. They become calm, not because everyone understands them, but because they are no longer divided inside. This is the sacred boundary between peace and performance. It is the line where you stop asking, "How do I make them see me?" and start asking, "How do I remain true to myself?" It is the line where you stop living for reputation and start living from awareness. It is the line where your goodness no longer needs a spotlight. Your maturity no longer needs a witness. Your loyalty no longer needs to be proven to the ungrateful. And your kindness no longer requires self-abandonment. At this age, let your peace be real, not performed. Let your kindness be honest, not fearful. Let your maturity be rooted, not forced. Let your loyalty be wise, not blind. Let your silence be sacred, not staged. Let your boundaries be clean, not decorated for approval. You do not need to keep performing your heart for people who have already decided to misunderstand it. If they cannot see your goodness without watching you suffer, they are not looking with love. If they cannot respect your maturity unless it benefits them, they are not honoring your growth. If they cannot believe your kindness unless you keep saying yes, they do not want kindness, they want access. If they cannot accept your peace unless it keeps you available to their chaos, they do not love your peace, they love your usefulness. So step back from the stage. Turn down the noise. Remove the costume of being endlessly acceptable. Let the false audience leave if they must. What remains will be quieter, but it will be truer. And truth, even when it is quiet, gives more freedom than applause ever could. At this age, you no longer owe anyone a performance of your goodness. You no longer owe anyone a public display of your maturity. You no longer owe anyone endless proof of your loyalty. You no longer owe anyone kindness that requires you to disappear. You owe your spirit a life where peace is not acted out, but lived, where love is not proven through self-betrayal, but expressed through truth, where freedom does not depend on being understood by people who already chose their version of you. And when you stop performing, something beautiful happens. Your peace stops being a mask and becomes your home. And when your peace stops being a mask and becomes your home, something else inside you begins to change. You no longer want to decorate your truth so people will accept it. You no longer want to bend every sentence until it sounds harmless. You no longer want to hide your real decision behind soft words, nervous laughter, and unnecessary apologies. At this age, you begin to understand that being liked can cost too much when the price is your clarity. There comes a point in life when the heart grows tired of speaking in circles. You have done that before. You have said maybe when your soul already knew it was no. You have said, "I will try," when your body was already begging for rest. You have said, "It is fine," when something inside you was not fine at all. You have smiled through discomfort, softened hard truths, delayed honest conversations, and carried silent resentment because you did not want anyone to feel uncomfortable. But now, after all the years of swallowing your truth to keep others calm, one question begins to rise. Who was protecting your peace while you were protecting everyone else's feelings? That question can hurt, but it can also wake you up. Clarity is not cruelty. This is one of the first things you must understand. Many people fear being clear because they think clear words are harsh words. They think honesty must sound cold. They think directness means lack of compassion. So they wrap their truth in so many soft layers that, by the time it reaches the other person, the truth has almost disappeared. They say too much, explain too much, apologize too much, and leave the conversation with the painful feeling that they still have not said what they needed to say. But honest peace does not need to attack anyone. Honest peace does not need to raise its voice. Honest peace does not need to humiliate, punish, accuse, or prove superiority. It simply says what is true without betraying the heart. It says, "I cannot continue this." It says, "That does not work for me." It says, "I need space." It says, "I am not available for that conversation." It says, "I have decided." It says, "I hear you, but my answer is still no." Simple words can feel shocking when you have spent years speaking from fear. They can feel too plain, too firm, too exposed. You may feel tempted to add a long explanation afterward, just to soften the silence. You may want to say, "Please do not misunderstand me," or "I hope you are not angry," or "I am sorry if this sounds bad," even when you have said nothing wrong. That temptation is old training. It is the voice of the part of you that believes peace is only safe when everyone approves of it. But there is an age where clarity becomes more important than being liked. Not because you stop caring about people, but because you finally start caring about truth. You realize that a life built on pleasing words becomes a confusing life. People do not know where you stand. You do not know where you stand. Every choice becomes foggy. Every relationship becomes full of guessing. Every boundary becomes weak because it was never spoken clearly enough to be honored. And when truth is unclear, resentment grows in the shadows. Think of how many relationships become heavy, not because love is absent, but because honesty is delayed. Someone keeps asking too much, and you keep saying yes with a tired smile. Someone keeps crossing a line, and you keep hoping they will notice the pain you never clearly named. Someone keeps calling at the wrong time, speaking to you in the wrong way, draining your energy, expecting your availability, and instead of saying the truth, you become quieter, colder, more distant, more resentful. Then one day the relationship breaks, and they say, "Why did you never tell me?" Sometimes they are avoiding responsibility, but sometimes there is truth in the question. Sometimes we expect people to respect boundaries we never clearly expressed. Sometimes we punish people with distance because we were too afraid to speak with honesty earlier. Sometimes we call it peace, but it is really avoidance wearing a calm face. Buddhist wisdom does not teach avoidance, it teaches awareness. It asks you to see clearly what is happening inside and outside you. It asks you to notice suffering before it becomes bitterness. It asks you to speak in a way that reduces confusion, not increases it. Right speech is not only about gentle speech, it is also about truthful speech, timely speech, useful speech, and speech that comes from a clean intention. A pleasing lie may sound gentle, but if it creates more suffering later, it is not wisdom. This is where many people struggle. They have confused being liked with being good. They believe if someone is pleased with them, they have done the right thing. But people can be pleased with you while you are betraying yourself. People can praise you while you are losing your peace. People can call you kind while you are carrying pain they never see. Being liked is not always a sign that you are living wisely. Sometimes it is only a sign that you have not disturbed anyone's comfort yet. Clarity may disturb comfort. That does not make it wrong. When you begin speaking clearly, some people will feel uncomfortable because they were used to your softness being endless. They were used to your yes arriving quickly. They were used to your silence after disrespect. They were used to your fear of disappointing them. So when you finally say, "No, I cannot do that," they may react as if you have become a different person. But often you have not become different. You have become honest. There is a deep freedom in allowing your words to match your inner truth. No hidden resentment, no false agreement, no smiling while your spirit pulls away. No saying yes and then secretly hoping something happens so you do not have to follow through. No pretending you are okay with what your body is rejecting. Clarity brings you back into one piece. Your mouth, your heart, and your actions finally stop living separate lives. This is important because every time you choose pleasing words over honest peace, you divide yourself. One part of you speaks, another part of you suffers. One part of you smiles, another part of you withdraws. One part of you says yes, another part of you feels trapped. This inner division is exhausting. It creates a quiet kind of suffering that is hard to explain because on the outside, everything looks fine. But your spirit knows when your words are false. Your body knows when your yes is a lie. Your sleep knows when you have agreed to something that goes against your peace. Your mood knows when you have swallowed too much. You may fool people, but you cannot fool your inner life forever. At this age, clarity becomes medicine. It cleans the confusion. It reduces unnecessary suffering. It prevents people from building expectations on a false version of you. It protects your energy before resentment grows. It helps you live with fewer hidden tensions. And it gives others the chance to meet the real you, not the pleasing version you created to avoid conflict. But clarity must be guided by wisdom. Being clear does not mean saying every thought that enters your mind. It does not mean using truth as a weapon. It does not mean becoming blunt just to feel powerful. Some people say, "I am just being honest," when what they really mean is, "I want permission to be unkind." That is not the clarity we are speaking about. That is ego. True clarity is firm, but it is not cruel. It is honest, but it is not careless. It is direct, but it still carries compassion. Buddhist wisdom asks you to check the root of your words. Are you speaking to heal or to hurt? Are you speaking to clarify or to win? Are you speaking from peace or from anger pretending to be truth? Are you speaking because the moment needs honesty or because your pride needs release? The same sentence can carry different energy depending on the heart behind it. "I need space" can be spoken as punishment or as peace. "No" can be spoken with contempt or with calm respect. "I cannot continue this" can be spoken as revenge or as honest release. The mature soul learns the difference. Choosing clarity over being liked also means accepting that some people will not reward your honesty. This is where freedom becomes real. Anyone can speak clearly when applause is guaranteed. Anyone can tell the truth when everyone agrees. But can you remain clear when someone is disappointed? Can you stay calm when someone calls your decision selfish? Can you keep your words simple when someone tries to pull you into guilt? Can you allow someone to dislike your boundary without running back to edit it? This is the age where you stop editing your truth every time someone frowns. For years you may have treated discomfort as danger. If someone became quiet, you panicked. If someone sounded upset, you explained more. If someone pulled away, you blamed yourself. If someone criticized you, you rushed to soften your decision. But not all discomfort is danger. Sometimes discomfort is simply what happens when truth enters a place where performance used to live. Sometimes people are uncomfortable because they are adjusting to a healthier version of you. Sometimes you are uncomfortable because your old habit of pleasing is losing control. You do not have to fix every discomfort. This is a powerful lesson. You can let people feel what they feel without making it your job to erase it. You can be kind to someone's disappointment without surrendering your decision. You can understand their sadness without making it more important than your peace. You can listen to their view without changing your truth just to calm them down. This is emotional maturity. It is not cold. It is not selfish. It is the ability to remain loving without becoming controlled by another person's reaction. There is a quiet sentence that can change your life. Their discomfort is not my command. Let that sit in your heart. Their disappointment is not always proof that you did wrong. Their anger is not always a sign that you must apologize. Their confusion is not always a demand for more explanation. Their silence is not always a punishment you must escape. Their opinion is not a law. Their mood is not your master. You can care, but you do not have to obey. This is especially important for people who have spent years choosing pleasing words. Pleasing words often come from the fear of emotional consequences. You are not only trying to be nice, you are trying to prevent anger, prevent rejection, prevent gossip, prevent conflict, prevent someone from thinking badly of you. So your words become less about truth and more about control. You try to control how others feel about you by saying what will keep them pleased, but control is still control, even when it wears a gentle face. You cannot truly control another person's reaction. You can only control the honesty and kindness of your own speech. Once your words leave your mouth, they enter another person's mind, history, wounds, ego, expectations, and beliefs. They may hear what you did not say. They may miss what you meant. They may twist what was simple. They may take your boundary as rejection. You can speak with care, but you cannot live inside their interpretation. This is why clarity must be paired with release. Speak honestly, then release the need to manage every reaction. Say what is true, then let the other person have their process. Do not chase your words into their mind and try to rearrange them there. That is how peace is lost. That is how one honest sentence becomes 2 hours of emotional labor. That is how a calm decision becomes a long defense. That is how you return to the same prison you were trying to leave. Clear speech, peaceful release. This is the practice. You may notice that when you become clearer, your relationships become simpler. Not always easier, but simpler. The people who respect you will know where you stand. The people who only liked your confusion will become exposed. The relationships built on truth may deepen. The relationships built on your fear may weaken. This can hurt, but it is also clean. Clarity has a way of sorting life. It shows who can meet you honestly and who only wanted the version of you that never made them uncomfortable. Some people prefer your pleasing words because pleasing words leave room for them to keep taking. If your no is unclear, they can push. If your boundary is soft, they can cross it. If your decision sounds uncertain, they can negotiate. If your truth is hidden behind a smile, they can pretend not to see it. But when your words become clear, they lose the space where manipulation used to live. This is why clarity is protective. It does not only express truth, it closes doors that confusion leaves open. A clear no protects your time. A clear "I cannot discuss this" protects your mind. A clear "that hurt me" protects your dignity. A clear "I need rest" protects your body. A clear "I am not available for disrespect" protects your spirit. These words are not walls of hate. They are lamps in the dark. They show where the path is and where it ends. And still, clarity requires courage, because the child inside you may still want to be liked. The old wound may still fear rejection. The people-pleasing habit may still whisper, "Make it softer, make it nicer, add more reasons. Do not sound too firm. What if they leave? What if they talk about you? What if they think you are bad?" You do not need to shame that fear. You only need to stop letting it lead. Fear can ride in the car, but it cannot hold the steering wheel. When you speak from clarity, you may feel nervous at first. Your voice may shake. Your hands may feel cold. Your heart may race. This does not mean you are wrong. It means your body is learning a new form of safety. For years, safety may have meant pleasing people. Now, safety means being truthful and remaining present. That transition takes practice. Be patient with yourself. Start with small truths. Say, "I prefer this." Say, "I do not have the energy today." Say, "That time does not work for me." Say, "I need to think about it." Say, "I am not comfortable with that." Each small truth teaches your nervous system that honesty will not destroy you. Each clear sentence builds trust with yourself. Each moment you do not collapse into pleasing becomes a brick in the house of inner freedom. Over time, you begin to respect yourself differently, not in a loud way, not in a proud way, but in a steady way. You begin to know that when your spirit speaks, you will not abandon it just to be liked. You begin to feel safe inside your own choices. You begin to stop looking around for approval before you honor what you know. This is one of the greatest changes that can happen with age. You stop needing to be everyone's idea of pleasant. You become more devoted to being whole. Wholeness may not please everyone. A whole person has edges. A whole person has limits. A whole person cannot be everywhere, cannot carry everyone, cannot agree with everything, cannot keep smiling through every wound. A whole person disappoints people sometimes, not from cruelty, but from truth. A whole person knows that love without honesty becomes performance, and peace without clarity becomes silence full of pain. At this age, you are allowed to be whole. You are allowed to stop using pretty words to cover painful truths. You are allowed to stop saying, "I do not mind," when you do mind. You are allowed to stop saying, "whatever you want," when your heart has a preference. You are allowed to stop saying, "it is okay," when something needs to change. You are allowed to stop saying, "sorry," when you are simply being honest. You are allowed to stop turning every boundary into a speech designed to protect someone from feeling the truth. The truth does not have to be violent, but it does need to be visible. There is a difference between being considerate and being unclear. Consideration thinks about how words land. Unclear speech hides the truth so no one reacts. Consideration is loving. Unclear speech is fearful. Consideration says, "Let me speak this with care." Fear says, "Let me speak this in a way that keeps me safe from their judgment." One honors both people. The other abandons you. You can be considerate without becoming confusing. You can say, "I care about you, but I cannot keep doing this." You can say, "I understand this may disappoint you, but my answer is no." You can say, "I value our relationship, and that is why I need to be honest." These words carry both truth and tenderness. They do not attack, but they do not disappear either. This is the kind of speech that brings honest peace, not the false peace where everyone smiles while resentment grows, not the fragile peace where one person carries the truth alone, not the peace that depends on silence, fear, and emotional pretending. Honest peace may feel uncomfortable at first, but it creates cleaner ground. People know what is real, you know what is real, and what is real can be healed, adjusted, accepted, or released. What is hidden cannot be healed. Many people live in relationships full of hidden truths, hidden tiredness, hidden anger, hidden disappointment, hidden needs, hidden boundaries, hidden grief, hidden resentment. They keep everything hidden because they do not want conflict. But hidden truth does not disappear. It leaks out. It becomes sarcasm. It becomes emotional distance. It becomes sudden anger over small things. It becomes cold replies. It becomes the loss of affection. It becomes the quiet death of connection. Clarity may feel risky, but hidden truth is also risky. The difference is that clarity gives healing a chance. When you choose clarity, you give life a chance to become honest. Maybe the other person listens. Maybe they do not. Maybe the relationship improves. Maybe it reveals that it was not strong enough to hold truth. Either way, you are no longer trapped in pretending. Either way, you have honored your inner life. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that everything changes, relationships change, roles change, needs change, energy changes. What you could carry 10 years ago may not be what you can carry now. What you tolerated before may no longer be acceptable. What once felt like love may now feel like attachment. What once felt like duty may now feel like self-betrayal. This does not make you bad. It makes you awake to impermanence. Clarity helps you move with change instead of lying to preserve an old image. You can say, "This no longer works for me." You can say, "I have changed." You can say, "I need a different way." You can say, "I cannot keep living by the old pattern." These words may unsettle people who want you frozen in the version they understand. But you are not here to remain understandable at the cost of your growth. Growth requires honest language. Without honest language, people keep relating to who you used to be. They keep making demands on an old version of you. They keep expecting old access, old silence, old sacrifice, old availability. Clear words help announce to your own life, not for performance, but for alignment, that something has shifted. And when something has shifted, your words must shift too. At this age, pleasing words may feel too small for the life you are trying to live. You need words with roots, words that do not collapse under pressure, words that carry peace but also carry weight, words that can be gentle without being weak, words that can be final without being cruel, words that can protect without attacking, words that can close a door without slamming it. This is the art of calm clarity. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not need to prove its power. It simply remains steady. A calm person saying, "No, thank you," can be more powerful than an angry person shouting for an hour. A steady boundary can end what 1,000 emotional explanations could not. A quiet truth can change the shape of a relationship because it leaves no room for confusion. But to practice calm clarity, you must be willing to release the identity of being easy to like. That identity may have protected you once. It may have helped you avoid criticism. It may have made people praise you, but it may also have kept you trapped. If being liked requires you to be unclear, it is too expensive. If being liked requires you to silence your needs, it is too expensive. If being liked requires you to act peaceful while losing peace, it is too expensive. If being liked requires you to keep choosing words that betray your truth, it is too expensive. Not everyone has to like the real you. This is not a sad thing, it is a freeing thing. Some people only liked your availability, some liked your agreement, some liked your fear of conflict, some liked your habit of making their comfort more important than your clarity. When those things change, their liking may change too. Let it. Love that depends on your self-erasure is not the love your soul needs now. The right people may still feel uncomfortable with your honesty at times, but they will not punish you for being real. They will ask, listen, adjust, and speak honestly back. They will not require you to become vague so they can remain comfortable. They will value the truth because they value the relationship. They will understand that clarity is not an enemy of love, it is one of love's cleanest forms. Because without clarity, love becomes guessing. Without clarity, kindness becomes resentment. Without clarity, loyalty becomes silent suffering. Without clarity, peace becomes a performance. But with clarity, love can breathe. Boundaries can be understood. Needs can be named. Choices can be respected. Distance can be honest. Connection can become real. This is why your words matter. Not many words, true words, clean words. Words that come from the part of you that is no longer kneeling. Words that do not beg to be liked. Words that do not attack to feel strong. Words that do not hide to avoid discomfort. Words that simply open the window and let truth enter the room. At this age, clarity becomes more important than being liked because your remaining life needs peace, not applause. You have spent enough years adjusting yourself to fit rooms that never made space for your whole being. You have spent enough energy choosing words that kept others calm while your own heart became restless. You have spent enough nights wondering why you feel unseen after working so hard to be acceptable. Now, let your language become a home for your truth. Let your words become simple enough for your spirit to trust them. Let your no be peaceful. Let your yes be honest. Let your boundaries be clear. Let your care be real. Let your decisions stand without being dressed in fear. Let your calm be stronger than your need to be liked. Some will understand, some will not. Some will adjust, some will resist. Some will respect you more, some will call you changed, but through it all, you will begin to feel something you may not have felt in years. The quiet strength of being on your own side. That strength is freedom, not the freedom of being admired by everyone, not the freedom of being approved by every person, not the freedom of never disappointing anyone, but the freedom of no longer abandoning your truth to remain pleasing. The freedom of speaking with care and still standing firm. The freedom of allowing others to feel uncomfortable without turning yourself into a lie to rescue them from it. At this age, you no longer need to choose pleasing words over honest peace. You can be kind and clear. You can be gentle and firm. You can be loving and truthful. You can be calm and still make decisions that others do not like. Your life does not need to be wrapped in words that make everyone comfortable. Your life needs words that keep your soul awake. And when clarity becomes more important than being liked, you stop living as a person waiting to be approved. You begin living as a person who has finally decided to be true. And when you begin living as a person who has finally decided to be true, another wisdom quietly enters your life. You start realizing that truth does not have to be placed in every hand. Your story does not have to be opened in every room. Your pain does not have to become a full explanation for people who only came with curiosity, judgment, or hidden hunger for details. At this age, clarity matters, yes, but clarity does not mean giving everyone the full story. Sometimes the clearest thing you can say is very little. There is a private tiredness that comes from telling too much to the wrong people. You open your heart because you want to be understood. You explain the years, the wounds, the disappointments, the quiet battles, the reasons behind your distance, the pain behind your decision, and the long road that brought you to this moment. But afterward, instead of feeling lighter, you feel exposed. You feel as if you handed something sacred to someone who did not wash their hands before touching it. And deep down, you know the truth. Not everyone has the maturity to hold your story without twisting it. This is where Buddhist discernment becomes important. Compassion does not mean giving every person full access to your inner world. Kindness does not mean telling everyone everything. Honesty does not mean removing all privacy. There is a difference between being truthful and being unguarded. There is a difference between being open-hearted and being careless with your own spirit. A wise person does not hide truth out of fear, but they also do not scatter truth in places where it will be stepped on. Your story is not common property. Your pain is not a public road. Your healing is not a performance. Your private reasons are not a meal for every hungry ear. Some people ask questions because they care. Some ask because they want control. Some ask because they want gossip. Some ask because your boundary has disturbed their comfort. Some ask because they want to find one sentence they can use against you later. And if you treat all these people the same, you will keep getting wounded in places where wisdom told you to be careful. At this age, you must learn that not every listener is a safe place. Some people listen with love. They listen slowly. They do not rush your pain. They do not interrupt your truth with their own judgment. They do not make your story about themselves. They do not collect your weakness as future ammunition. When you speak, they hold your words with care. You can feel your body soften around them. You do not feel the need to perform, defend, or polish every sentence. Their presence gives your truth room to breathe. But some people listen like hunters. They wait for a weakness. They wait for a contradiction. They wait for a detail they can question. They wait for something they can carry to someone else. They do not listen to understand your heart. They listen to build their version of the story. And once they have enough, they walk away with pieces of you they were never worthy to carry. This is why discernment is not bitterness. It is protection. Buddhist wisdom teaches that awareness must guide compassion. Without awareness, compassion becomes self-abandonment. Without discernment, kindness becomes an open gate for people who have no respect for sacred ground. You can wish people well without telling them everything. You can forgive someone without giving them access to your deepest reasons. You can be peaceful without being transparent to those who have proven they cannot handle truth with care. A lot of people confuse privacy with dishonesty. They think if you do not tell them everything, you are hiding something wrong. But privacy is not always secrecy. Sometimes privacy is dignity. Sometimes privacy is healing. Sometimes privacy is the way the soul protects what is still tender. A seed does not grow because it is exposed to every eye. It grows because it is covered, protected, and given the right conditions. In the same way, some parts of your life need quiet protection before they can become strong. You do not owe everyone the full story of why you changed. You do not owe everyone the full story of why you stopped visiting, stopped calling, stopped trying, stopped explaining, stopped giving access. You do not owe everyone the full history of how many times you were hurt before your heart became quiet. Sometimes a simple sentence is enough. I needed peace. I had to step back. That season is over. I am choosing a different path now. These words may not satisfy everyone, but your life was not created to satisfy everyone's curiosity. Some people will pressure you for more. They will say, but what really happened? They will say, tell me everything. They will say, I just want to understand. And maybe some of them do, but you must learn to listen beneath the words. Does their energy feel patient or demanding? Does their care feel gentle or hungry? Do they want your healing or do they want information? Do they respect what you choose not to share or do they punish you for keeping something private? A person who cares about your peace will not force open what you are not ready to reveal. They may ask, but they will not pry. They may be concerned, but they will not invade. They may want to understand, but they will not make your full story the price of their respect. They can honor your boundary even without holding every detail. That is emotional maturity. But people who feel entitled to your story often act offended when you do not give them full access. They confuse closeness with ownership. They believe their relationship with you gives them the right to know everything. They may say, "After all we have been through, you cannot tell me." They may say, "So now you are keeping secrets." They may say, "You have changed." And again, maybe you have. Maybe you have changed from being easy to access into being wise about access. Maybe you have changed from spilling your truth to anyone who asked into honoring your truth enough to protect it. This kind of change is not coldness, it is sacred maturity. There was a time when you may have thought explaining everything would make people more compassionate. You believed that if they knew how deeply something hurt you, they would stop hurting you. If they knew how tired you were, they would stop demanding. If they knew the full history, they would stop judging the present. If they knew the childhood wounds, the disappointments, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, the prayers, the tears, they would finally be gentle. But life teaches you that information does not create compassion in people who lack compassion. Details do not create maturity in people who do not want to grow. Your full story will not automatically make someone kind. Sometimes it only gives an unkind person more material. This is a painful lesson, but it is also freeing. You stop believing that your pain must be fully displayed before it deserves respect. You stop turning your wounds into evidence. You stop thinking, "Maybe if I tell them everything, they will finally understand." Some people could read every chapter of your heart and still misquote the story. Some people could hear your deepest pain and still call you dramatic. Some people could watch you break and still ask why you are not giving more. So the question becomes, why keep giving sacred truth to careless hands? In Buddhist practice, wisdom is not only about what you say, it is about timing, intention, and the mind of the listener. A truth spoken at the wrong time, to the wrong person, in the wrong setting, can create more suffering than silence. This does not mean truth is wrong. It means truth needs the right conditions. Rain nourishes a field, but the same rain can flood a broken house. Fire can warm a room, but in the wrong place it destroys. Truth is powerful, and powerful things must be handled wisely. Before you tell the full story, pause. Ask yourself, why am I sharing this? Am I sharing because this person has earned trust, or because I feel pressured? Am I sharing because it will bring healing, or because I want to be approved? Am I sharing because it is necessary, or because silence feels uncomfortable? Am I sharing from peace, or from the old fear of being misunderstood? These questions protect you from emotional exposure that later turns into regret. You can also ask, what has this person done with small truths? This is important. Before someone receives the full story, watch what they do with smaller pieces of truth. When you share a small boundary, do they respect it? When you share a small pain, do they honor it? When you share a small mistake, do they use it against you? When you share a private detail, does it remain private? Trust is not built by words. Trust is revealed by behavior. If someone mishandles small truth, do not hand them deep truth. Many people ignore this. They feel lonely, so they overshare. They feel misunderstood, so they explain everything to the first person who asks. They feel hurt, so they pour out their heart to someone who has not shown the ability to hold it. Later they feel exposed, judged, or betrayed. But the wound did not begin only when the other person mishandled the story. It began when discernment was ignored. This is not to blame you, it is to awaken you. Many of us overshare from pain. We want connection. We want relief. We want someone to finally say, "I understand." There is nothing shameful about that longing. It is deeply human. But when longing leads without wisdom, it may place your tender places in unsafe rooms. You can honor your need for connection while still being careful about where you seek it. Not every open ear is an open heart. Some people enjoy being included in your pain because it makes them feel important. They like knowing what others do not know. They enjoy being the keeper of your private details. They may act concerned, but there is a strange excitement in their questions. You can feel it. Their eyes become sharp. Their voice becomes eager. They ask for more than the moment requires. And when you finish speaking, you do not feel held. You feel emptied. Learn to notice that feeling. Your body often senses unsafe listening before your mind names it. If you feel smaller after sharing, pay attention. If you feel ashamed after speaking, pay attention. If you feel like you must now manage what they might do with your words, pay attention. If you regret opening up before the conversation is even over, pay attention. Your inner wisdom may be telling you that your truth was not received in a clean place. A safe listener leaves you feeling respected, even if the conversation was painful. An unsafe listener leaves you feeling used, studied, or exposed. This distinction matters. At this age, you are allowed to become selective with your story. This is not arrogance, it is stewardship. You are the keeper of your life. You decide which parts are spoken, which parts are silent, which parts are shared with trusted people, and which parts remain between you, your breath, and whatever you call sacred. No one else gets to decide that for you. There is power in saying, "I am not ready to talk about that." There is power in saying, "That is personal." There is power in saying, "I have shared enough." There is power in saying, "I prefer to keep the details private." These are complete sentences. They do not require nervous laughter. They do not require guilt. They do not require you to offer a smaller secret just to satisfy the person. Some people will not like this. They may see your privacy as rejection. They may call you secretive. They may say you are acting strange. But someone else's discomfort with your privacy is not proof that your privacy is wrong. People who are used to unlimited access often mistake healthy limits for hostility. Let them adjust. One of the greatest freedoms of age is that you stop confusing being known by everyone with being loved. In youth, many people want to be seen, heard, validated, understood by many. They think openness creates closeness. Sometimes it does, but with time you learn that being deeply known by a few safe souls is far better than being widely exposed to many unsafe ones. A private life can be a peaceful life. A quiet story can be a protected story. A guarded heart can still be a loving heart. You do not need to explain your whole past to justify your present boundary. Your boundary is valid, even if people do not know every wound behind it. You do not need to retell every betrayal to explain why you trust differently now. You do not need to list every disappointment to explain why you are careful. You do not need to prove the depth of your pain for your healing to be respected. Some people want the full story because they do not respect the short answer. But if someone cannot respect the short answer, they may not deserve the long one. This is a simple but powerful truth. A person who cannot honor "I need space" may not honor the reasons behind it. A person who mocks "I am tired" may not honor the full history of your exhaustion. A person who argues with "I cannot continue this" may use your deeper explanation as a battlefield. Their reaction to the small truth shows you how they may handle the larger truth. Do not ignore the preview. Buddhist discernment is not about judging people with hatred. It is about seeing clearly. Some people are not evil, but they are not safe for your story. Some people may love you in their limited way, but still lack the emotional maturity to hold your truth. Some people may mean well, but their fear, ego, gossip habit, jealousy, or need for control makes them careless. Seeing this does not require anger. It requires honesty. You can say in your heart, "This person is not a safe container for this part of me." That sentence can save you from much suffering. You do not have to condemn them. You do not have to hate them. You simply choose not to place sacred truth where it may be mishandled. There is a deep kindness in this too. Not every person is capable of receiving everything. Sometimes sharing too much with someone who lacks capacity creates confusion, defensiveness, or harm. They may not know what to do with it. They may feel blamed. They may become overwhelmed. They may respond poorly, not because your truth is wrong, but because they are not ready to hold it. Discernment protects both your peace and the other person from a conversation neither of you can carry well. This is especially true with old wounds. Some stories are still tender. They need careful spaces. They need people who can listen without rushing to fix, compare, judge, or explain away your pain. They need people who understand that listening is not the same as taking over. If someone cannot sit with discomfort, they may try to silence your story with advice. They may say, "Just let it go." They may say, "Others had it worse." They may say, "You are still thinking about that." Not because they are always cruel, but because they do not know how to sit beside pain without trying to escape it. Your story deserves better than being rushed out of the room. Some truths are like deep water. Not everyone knows how to swim there. If you bring deep water to someone who only knows shallow conversation, they may panic. They may splash. They may blame the water. They may tell you it is too much. That does not mean your depth is wrong. It means you must choose carefully who you invite into it. At this age, you do not need to apologize for having depth. You only need to stop offering it where it cannot be honored. There is also the matter of timing. A person may be safe in general, but not safe in every moment. Someone may love you, but be too tired to hold a painful story today. Someone may care, but be dealing with their own storm. Someone may have maturity, but the setting may be wrong. Buddhist wisdom understands conditions. A seed needs the right soil, water, light, and season. In the same way, truth needs the right time, the right listener, the right intention, and the right amount. You do not have to pour the whole ocean into one conversation. You can share slowly. You can share in layers. You can test the ground. You can stop when your spirit says enough. You can return later. You can decide that a person gets the outline, not the details. You can decide that someone gets the present truth, not the past history. You can decide that a relationship needs clarity, but not full emotional exposure. This is a wise way to live. It allows truth without carelessness. It allows connection without self-betrayal. It allows privacy without hiding from everyone. Some people may accuse you of being guarded, but being guarded is not always a flaw. A garden has a gate, not because it hates visitors, but because what grows inside is valuable. Without a gate, anything can enter. Feet can crush what is tender. Hands can take what was still growing. Animals can destroy what was carefully planted. The gate is not against love. The gate protects life. Your heart also needs a gate. Not a wall that blocks everyone. Not a prison built from fear. A gate. Something that opens with wisdom and closes with wisdom. Something that lets in those who come with care and keeps out those who come with careless hands. Something that allows you to remain loving without being invaded. This is the difference between openness and access. You can have an open heart and still limit access. You can wish people well and still not tell them everything. You can be warm in your spirit and still be careful with your details. You can be compassionate and still say, "This part of my life is not for discussion." The more you practice this, the less you feel guilty for protecting yourself. At first, guilt may appear. You may hear the old voice saying, "You are being distant. You should explain more." They will think you are hiding something. They will feel hurt. Let the guilt rise without obeying it immediately. Guilt is not always a moral guide. Sometimes it is only a memory of old conditioning. Sometimes it is the echo of times when privacy was punished and boundaries were misunderstood. Breathe through it. Remind yourself, I can be honest without being fully exposed. I can be kind without being completely available. I can respect someone without giving them every detail. I can protect my story and still live with love. This is spiritual adulthood. There is also freedom in letting your life speak without telling every chapter. Not everyone needs to know what made you wise. Not everyone needs to know what broke you open. Not everyone needs to know the private cost of your calm. Some people will see the fruit and never know the root. Let it be so. The tree does not explain the darkness it grew through. It simply stands. You may have survived things that people would not understand, even if you explained them perfectly. You may have forgiven things you never speak about. You may have left situations after years of invisible trying. You may have become quiet because the words were used up long before the silence arrived. You may have changed because staying the same was slowly harming you. You do not need to turn all of that into a presentation. Your transformation does not need to be footnoted for public approval. The full story belongs where it can bring healing, justice, repair, or sacred connection. It does not belong where it will become gossip, argument, entertainment, judgment, or emotional control. This is not fear, this is wise placement. Just as you would not place a candle in strong wind and expect the flame to survive, do not place your most tender truths in reckless spaces and expect your peace to remain untouched. The world is full of people who want details, but not responsibility. They want to know what happened, but they do not want to help carry the weight of knowing. They want to hear your pain, but they do not want to change how they treat you. They want access to your story, but not accountability for how they handle it. Be careful with such people. Their curiosity can look like care from a distance, but up close, it leaves you feeling alone. True care does not demand the full story before offering respect. True care does not need every detail before it becomes gentle. True care does not say, "Prove your pain to me." True care says, "I may not know everything, but I will still treat you with dignity." That is the kind of care your soul deserves now. At this age, you are allowed to stop explaining the full map of your wounds. You can let some things remain unnamed. You can let some chapters stay closed. You can let some memories be held only in prayer, meditation, journaling, therapy, or the presence of someone truly safe. You can let some truths live quietly inside you without turning them into public language. Silence, in this way, is not denial. It is reverence. Reverence means you understand that some things are sacred because they changed you. Some pain deserves respect. Some healing deserves privacy. Some decisions came from a place so deep that ordinary conversation cannot hold them. When you treat your own story with reverence, you stop throwing it into conversations just because someone asks. You stop making your wounds perform for sympathy. You stop using your trauma as a passport to be believed by people who have already shown poor care. Instead, you become careful. You become calm. You become selective. You speak when speech is wise. You remain quiet when quiet is protective. You share with those who have earned trust. You keep boundaries with those who only want access. This is not closing your heart. This is learning how to keep it alive. And something beautiful happens when you stop giving the full story to everyone. Your energy returns. You no longer feel emotionally drained after every conversation. You no longer fear what someone might do with your words. You no longer regret exposing yourself to people who were not ready. You no longer feel like your life is scattered across the hands of those who did not value it. you begin to feel gathered, whole, present, back inside yourself. There is peace in having parts of your life that belong only to you. There is peace in not being fully explainable. There is peace in knowing that your depth does not have to be displayed to be real. There is peace in letting some people wonder. There is peace in allowing some questions to remain unanswered. There is peace in saying less and losing nothing sacred. Because the people who truly see you do not always need the full story. Sometimes they see your tired eyes and become gentle. They hear the small pause in your voice and understand enough. They notice your quiet boundary and respect it. They do not demand every detail because they value your comfort more than their curiosity. These people are rare, and when you find them, you will know. Your nervous system will know. Your spirit will exhale. Until then, be wise with your truth. Do not harden, but do not be careless. Do not become suspicious of everyone, but do not hand everyone the keys. Do not let past betrayal make you cold, but let it make you discerning. There is a difference. Coldness says, "No one deserves me." Discernment says, "The right people will receive the right access." Coldness closes the heart from fear. Discernment guards the heart with wisdom. At this age, you no longer have to prove your honesty by telling everything. You no longer have to prove your healing by explaining every wound. You no longer have to prove your peace by giving people full access to the path that brought you there. Your truth is precious. Your story is sacred. Your inner world is not a marketplace where every passerby can inspect what they want. Let your story be held like a sacred bowl. Offer it only where there are steady hands. Share it only where there is humility, patience, compassion, and maturity. And when those qualities are missing, do not be afraid to give less. A small truth can be enough. A quiet boundary can be enough. A closed chapter can be enough. Not everyone deserves the full story. Not because you are above them, but because your spirit is no longer available for careless handling. Not because you hate them, but because you have learned the cost of giving sacred things to people who do not know how to honor them. Not because you are hiding your life, but because you are finally protecting it. And when you understand this, you stop feeling guilty for being private. You stop mistaking exposure for honesty. You stop confusing curiosity with care. You stop treating every question as a command. You stop opening your heart in rooms where your peace has no protection. You begin to live with a quieter strength, the kind that does not need everyone to know everything before it feels valid. At this age, let your truth become precious again. Let your story return to sacred ground. Let your words be chosen, not forced. Let your silence be respected, not defended. Let your heart have a gate, not a wall. And let your peace remind you that the full story belongs only where love has proven it can hold the weight. And when your peace reminds you that the full story belongs only where love has proven it can hold the weight, another burden begins to lose its power over you. You start seeing how much of your life was spent standing in invisible courtrooms, trying to defend your heart before people who had already written the sentence. You were not only explaining, you were not only sharing, you were not only trying to be understood, you were acting like your own defense lawyer, gathering proof, arranging evidence, calling witnesses from your memory, and pleading for people to believe that your motives were pure. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fully fix. It comes from always feeling accused, even when no one has said the words directly. It comes from living with the pressure to prove that you meant well, that you cared, that you tried, that you did not leave easily, that your silence was not cruelty, that your boundary was not selfishness, that your distance was not pride, that your healing was not an attack. And after years of this, your spirit begins to ask, why am I always on trial in front of people who never wanted justice in the first place? That question is painful, but it is also a doorway. Because once you see the courtroom clearly, you can stop walking into it. Many people do not realize how often they defend their motives. They think they are having normal conversations. They think they are clearing the air. They think they are being responsible, but inside they are tense. Their words are rushed. Their chest is tight. Their mind is searching for the perfect sentence that will finally make the other person fair. They say, "That is not what I meant." Then they say it again in another way. Then they bring up the past. Then they explain their intention. Then they explain the emotion behind the intention. Then they apologize for how it sounded. Then they clarify the apology. Then they leave the conversation feeling smaller than before. Why? Because they were not speaking from freedom. They were pleading for acquittal. A real conversation creates room for truth. A courtroom creates pressure to win. In a real conversation, both people listen. In a courtroom, one person is accused and the other person holds judgment. In a real conversation, questions are asked with curiosity. In a courtroom, questions are used like traps. In a real conversation, your words can breathe. In a courtroom, every word can be twisted into evidence against you. At this age, you must learn the difference. Not every intense discussion deserves your full emotional labor. Not every accusation requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding needs to become a trial. Some people are not asking because they want to understand your heart. They are asking because they want you to keep explaining until you become tired enough to surrender. This is why constantly defending your motives drains the spirit. It pulls your attention away from your own center and places it in the hands of someone else's judgment. You stop asking, "What is true?" and start asking, "How can I make them believe me?" You stop standing in your own knowing and start performing innocence. You become careful, nervous, overly detailed, and emotionally exposed. You begin to speak as if the truth is not enough unless the other person accepts it. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace does not come from controlling how others judge you. Peace comes from seeing clearly, acting with awareness, and releasing the need to force the outcome. You can know your intention. You can speak truthfully. You can take responsibility where needed. But you cannot enter another person's mind and make them fair. You cannot force a closed heart to become gentle. You cannot make someone see your purity if they are committed to painting you as the problem. And this is where the exhaustion begins. Trying to make unfair judges become fair through more words. You may know this feeling. Someone questions your decision, and suddenly you feel the need to prove your whole character. They say, "You only care about yourself." And instead of simply knowing that is not true, you begin listing all the times you cared. You remind them of what you sacrificed. You explain what you gave up. You talk about the years you showed up. You bring out your loyalty like evidence. But the person does not soften. They only find another angle. They say, "If you really cared, you would not act like this." Now the trial continues. That is how unfair judgment works. It does not receive evidence. It feeds on it. The more you defend, the more material it has. The more you explain, the more it questions. The more you prove, the more it raises the standard. You think one more sentence will end the case, but the case keeps moving. This is because the goal was never truth. The goal was control, guilt, or emotional victory. A fair person does not need you to bleed before they consider your heart. A fair person can hear a simple explanation and reflect. A fair person can disagree without trying to destroy your character. A fair person can say, "I see it differently," without making you evil. A fair person can be hurt and still leave room for your humanity. But an unfair judge reduces you to one moment, one decision, one boundary, one refusal, one misunderstood sentence, and then expects you to defend your entire soul from there. You do not have to keep appearing before that court. This does not mean you never correct misunderstandings. It does not mean you refuse accountability. It does not mean you walk around saying, "I know my heart," while hurting others and avoiding repair. That would not be wisdom. That would be ego hiding behind spirituality. If you have caused harm, speak with humility. If you have been unclear, clarify. If your actions affected someone, listen. If an apology is needed, offer it cleanly, without excuses. A peaceful person is not someone who avoids responsibility. A peaceful person is someone who does not turn responsibility into endless self-punishment. There is a difference between accountability and trial. Accountability has a path. You listen, you acknowledge, you clarify, you repair where possible. Then both people move toward understanding. A trial has no path. It circles, it repeats, it humiliates. It keeps demanding more. It does not seek healing. It seeks submission. Accountability leaves you more honest. A trial leaves you drained and confused. You can feel the difference in your body. After accountability, even if the conversation is difficult, there is often a quiet relief. Something has been named, something has been faced, something has been made cleaner. But after an emotional trial, you feel scattered. You replay every word. You wonder if you are a bad person. You feel guilty even when you did not act wrongly. You feel desperate to send one more message, make one more call, give one more explanation, offer one more proof. Your spirit feels like it has been cross-examined. That is not peace. That is spiritual exhaustion. At this age, you must stop mistaking exhaustion for love. Many people believe that if they love someone, they must keep defending themselves until the relationship feels okay again. They believe if they stop explaining, they are giving up. They believe if they do not answer every accusation, they are being cold. But sometimes stopping is not giving up on love. Sometimes stopping is refusing to participate in a pattern that turns love into suffering. Love should not require you to stand trial every time you make a decision someone dislikes. Love should not require you to defend your motives against accusations that are not rooted in truth. Love should not make you feel like your entire character is up for review every time you say no. If a relationship only feels safe when you are constantly proving yourself, that relationship is not giving your soul rest. And the soul needs rest, not just physical rest, but emotional rest. The rest of not being questioned with suspicion, the rest of being believed without begging, the rest of having your no respected without a court case, the rest of being allowed to grow without being accused of betrayal, the rest of not having to carry a folder of evidence everywhere you go. Buddhist wisdom understands the burden of mental stories. The mind creates cases all day long. It argues with people who are not present. It defends itself before imaginary judges. It replays old accusations. It prepares future explanations. It writes speeches in the silence of the night. This is one reason the mind becomes restless. It is not only thinking, it is litigating. It is trying to win trials that may never end. Meditation, awareness, and right understanding help you see this. You sit quietly, and you notice how often your mind is defending itself. You notice the inner voice saying, "But I did not mean it that way. They should know I tried. If only I had explained better. What if they think I am selfish? What if everyone believes their version?" You see how much energy is spent defending a self-image, and gently, with practice, you begin to release the need to win every inner case. You come back to the breath. You come back to intention. You come back to the present. You ask, have I acted with as much awareness as I can? If yes, rest. Is there something I need to repair? If yes, repair it. Is this guilt teaching me, or is it controlling me? Listen carefully. Am I being called into honesty or pulled into another trial? This kind of inner questioning is not self-attack. It is wisdom. It helps you know when to speak and when to step away. The problem with always being your own defense lawyer is that you never get to be fully human. You are always preparing, always alert, always managing the story, always thinking about how your actions may be interpreted, always trying to prevent criticism before it arrives. This keeps you from living naturally. You become stiff inside. Even your kindness becomes anxious. Even your silence becomes strategic. Even your rest feels guilty. You were not born to live under constant examination. At some point, you must return your soul to a place of basic trust. Trust that you can make a decision without explaining it to every person. Trust that your intentions can be clean even when others question them. Trust that you can make mistakes and repair them without turning your whole life into shame. Trust that being misunderstood will not destroy you. Trust that your worth is not decided by the loudest accusation in the room. This trust is not arrogance. Arrogance refuses to look at itself. Trust is willing to look, but not willing to be endlessly condemned. Arrogance says, "I am never wrong." Trust says, "I will be honest with myself, but I will not hand my soul to people who enjoy finding me guilty." Arrogance avoids the mirror. Trust looks into the mirror, then walks away from the courtroom. There is a quiet freedom in knowing your motives without needing to display them. You can know you stepped back because your peace was suffering. You can know you said no because your body was tired. You can know you left because the pattern was harming you. You can know you became silent because words had stopped helping. You can know you chose differently because your life needed healing, and you can let that knowing be enough. Not everyone will accept it. Some will say you are making excuses. Some will say you are hiding. Some will say you are acting innocent. Some will say you are avoiding responsibility. Let their words pass through the filter of truth. If there is something useful there, learn from it. If there is only accusation, do not drink it. Not every opinion deserves to become your inner voice. This is important because many people internalize unfair judges. At first, the judge is outside, a parent, partner, friend, sibling, community, co-worker, or relative. But after years of defending yourself, the judge moves inside. Even when no one is accusing you, you accuse yourself. Even when no one is watching, you explain yourself internally. You feel guilty for resting, guilty for choosing, guilty for changing, guilty for needing space, guilty for being happy without someone's approval. The courtroom has become internal. Buddhist practice helps you notice the inner judge without becoming its prisoner. You can say, "This is the voice of fear. This is the voice of old guilt. This is the voice of someone I used to obey. This is not wisdom." When you name it, it loses some power. You begin to see that every accusing thought is not truth. Some thoughts are old conditioning. Some thoughts are memories. Some thoughts are echoes of people who benefited from your self-doubt. You do not have to believe every thought that prosecutes you. This realization can change your whole life. You may still feel the old fear, but you do not have to build a legal defense for it. You may still feel misunderstood, but you do not have to chase everyone who misunderstands you. You may still feel the impulse to explain, but you can pause before obeying it. In that pause, freedom grows. There is a simple practice that can help. When you feel accused, before you defend yourself, ask, "Is this person fair?" Not perfect, fair. Are they willing to listen? Are they able to see more than one side? Have they shown respect for truth before? Do they ask questions with care or with a desire to trap? Do they want understanding or do they want a confession? If the person is not fair, do not give them the power of a judge. You can also ask, "Is this conversation going somewhere healing?" If the answer is no, then more defense may only deepen suffering. A conversation that goes nowhere does not become wise because you stay longer. A person who twists everything does not become safe because you explain more gently. A courtroom does not become a home because you decorate your words with kindness. Sometimes the wisest response is, "I have explained what I can." Sometimes it is, "I do not agree with how you are describing my intentions." Sometimes it is, "This conversation is no longer helpful." Sometimes it is silence, not the silence of punishment, but the silence of someone who has recognized that the trial is not honest. At this age, you must stop wasting sacred energy on dishonest trials. Your energy is not endless. Your peace is not cheap. Your heart has carried enough. Every hour spent defending yourself before unfair judges is an hour taken from healing, prayer, rest, creativity, family, gratitude, service, and quiet joy. Every night spent replaying accusations is a night your body does not fully recover. Every moment spent proving your motives to someone who does not want truth is a moment you are absent from your own life. And life is too short now for unnecessary courtrooms. There is a point where you must choose living over defending. You must choose peace over being declared innocent. You must choose your own inner freedom over the hope that someone will finally say, "You were right." That sentence may never come. Some people will never admit they judged you unfairly. Some will never apologize for twisting your motives. Some will never confess that they enjoyed making you feel guilty. Some will keep their version because it protects their pride. If you wait for their fairness before you rest, you may never rest. This is why freedom begins when you stop putting your soul on trial. You do not stop caring about truth. You stop begging unfair people to honor it. You do not stop being accountable. You stop allowing accountability to be turned into endless humiliation. You do not stop explaining where explanation is useful. You stop explaining where explanation becomes self-abandonment. A soul on trial cannot breathe, it cannot create, it cannot love freely, it cannot rest deeply. It is always watching, always defending, always preparing, always trying to avoid guilt. But a soul released from trial begins to soften. It begins to trust life again. It begins to speak less anxiously. It begins to move without constantly looking back at the courtroom. You may notice small changes first. You no longer answer every accusation immediately. You no longer write long messages to prove your heart. You no longer share private evidence just to be believed. You no longer panic when someone misunderstands your motive. You no longer feel the need to make every person see the full purity of your intention. You correct what is necessary, then return to yourself. This is not weakness. It is discipline. It takes discipline not to defend yourself when your ego feels attacked. It takes discipline to stay calm when someone describes you falsely. It takes discipline to let a person keep their wrong opinion without rushing to fix it. It takes discipline to choose silence when your mind has 1,000 arguments ready. It takes discipline to say, "I know what is true," and let that be enough. But this discipline saves your spirit. The Buddha's path is not about winning arguments. It is about ending suffering. Sometimes winning the argument creates more suffering. You prove your point but lose your peace. You correct the accusation but spend days emotionally shaken. You force someone to hear you, but your heart feels bruised from the fight. You win the courtroom and still go home tired. So what did you really win? At this age, victory must be redefined. Victory is not always being understood. Victory is not always being liked. Victory is not always being proven right. Sometimes victory is keeping your nervous system calm. Sometimes victory is not sending the long message. Sometimes victory is allowing the false accusation to pass without making a home for it inside you. Sometimes victory is walking away before your dignity becomes another sacrifice. This kind of victory is quiet, but it is powerful. You also begin to understand that motives are complex. Even your own motives may not always be perfectly pure. Sometimes you are kind and afraid at the same time. Sometimes you set boundaries from wisdom and pain at the same time. Sometimes you leave because you need peace and because you are tired of hoping. Sometimes you speak because you care and because you want relief. Being human means carrying mixed feelings. You do not have to defend yourself as if you are pure in every possible way. You only have to be honest enough to keep learning. This truth brings humility. You stop trying to present yourself as perfect. You stop needing to prove that every action came from a flawless place. You can say, I did my best with the awareness I had. You can say, I may not have handled everything perfectly, but my need for peace was real. You can say, I am willing to learn, but I will not accept a false sentence over my whole character. That is a mature way to live. Humble, but not self-abandoning. Open, but not defenseless. Accountable, but not imprisoned. Some people may try to use your humility against you. The moment you admit one small mistake, they use it to condemn everything. You say, maybe I could have communicated better, and they say, exactly, so this is all your fault. You say, I was hurt, and they say, so you admit you were emotional. You say, I needed space, and they say, so you abandoned us. That is not fairness. That is manipulation of honesty. Do not stop being honest because some people misuse honesty. Just become more discerning about where and how you offer it. Honesty is sacred. Do not throw it into hands that only want to turn it into a weapon. Your inner life must become a place where truth can exist without trial. You can sit with yourself and ask, was I acting from fear? Was I acting from love? Was I avoiding something? Was I protecting peace? Do I need to apologize? Do I need to stand firm? These questions help you grow, but ask them with compassion, not violence. You are not here to become your own harsh judge. You are here to become your own wise witness. The harsh judge says, you are guilty. The wise witness says, look carefully. The harsh judge says, you are bad. The wise witness says, what can be learned? The harsh judge creates shame. The wise witness creates awareness. The harsh judge traps you in the past. The wise witness helps you walk forward with more consciousness. This is the inner shift that ends the need for outer courtrooms. When you trust your own wise witness, you do not need unfair people to define you. You can listen to feedback without collapsing. You can admit mistakes without drowning. You can reject false accusations without hatred. You can stand in your truth without needing to perform innocence. At this age, let your soul retire from the job of constant defense. It has worked too long in that role. It has stayed awake too many nights. It has answered too many accusations. It has carried too many files from the past. It has tried too hard to make unfair people fair. Let it rest now. You're allowed to close the case in your own heart. You're allowed to stop presenting evidence to people who keep changing the charge. You are allowed to say, I know what happened, I know what I meant, I know what I have learned, and I will not keep bleeding on this floor. You are allowed to leave the courtroom without hatred. You are allowed to walk into the open air of your own life. And when you do, you may feel strange at first. Peace can feel unfamiliar after years of defense. You may wonder, should I say more? Should I explain again? Should I make sure they know? Let those thoughts pass. They are old habits knocking on a door you no longer have to open. Breathe. Return to the present. Feel the dignity of not defending what does not need defense. Your motives are not always for public inspection. Your soul is not a witness stand. Your life is not a case file. Your peace is not waiting for a verdict. The people who love you fairly will not require endless proof. The people who judge you unfairly will not be satisfied by it. So save your breath for what heals. Save your words for where they matter. Save your energy for a life that is no longer built around defense. At this age, you no longer have to be your own defense lawyer. You can be your own protector, your own witness, your own place of return. You can speak truth once, repair what is yours, release what is not, and walk away from the trial. And when your soul finally steps out of that courtroom, it will remember something simple and beautiful. It was never created to live under accusation. It was created to be free. And when your soul finally steps out of the courtroom, it meets a silence that may feel strange at first. No judge, no witness stand, no need to prove your motive, no need to defend every choice, no need to chase every wrong opinion and beg it to become kind. But then comes the next test of freedom. Can you let people think what they want without running back to correct them? This is where many hearts struggle, not because they are weak, but because being misunderstood can feel like a small fire burning inside the chest. Someone thinks you are proud when you are only tired. Someone thinks you are cold when you are only healing. Someone says you left because you stopped caring, when the truth is, you cared so much that staying was slowly breaking you. And the old self wants to rush in, explain, defend, correct, prove, and rescue your image before it is ruined. But at this age, Buddhist wisdom asks you a deeper question. Must every false idea about you be repaired before you allow yourself to be free? There is a quiet strength in letting people think what they want. It is not the strength that shouts. It is not the strength that wins arguments. It is not the strength that demands everyone must know the truth. It is the strength that sits calmly inside itself and says, I know what is true, and I no longer need every mind to agree with it. That kind of strength is rare because the human heart wants to be seen correctly. We all want our intentions to be known. We all want our kindness to be recognized. We all want people to understand the pain behind our choices, the patience behind our silence, the love behind our distance, and the courage behind our boundaries. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be understood. The suffering begins when your peace depends on being understood by everyone. Because the world is full of people who will only know fragments of you. Some will know your old self and judge your new self by it. Some will know your mistakes and ignore your growth. Some will know your silence and invent reasons for it. Some will know your boundary and call it betrayal. Some will know your absence and forget how many times you showed up before you disappeared. If you spend your life correcting every incomplete version of you, you will never have enough energy left to actually live. People will think what they want because their thoughts are shaped by more than your truth. Their thoughts are shaped by their wounds, pride, fears, jealousy, expectations, disappointments, and the stories they need to believe in order to feel innocent. A person who is used to control may call your freedom disrespect. A person who avoids accountability may call your boundary cruelty. A person who benefited from your silence may call your honesty drama. A person who liked your old self may call your healing arrogance. If you chase these opinions, you will become trapped in other people's inner weather. One day they are warm and you feel safe. Another day they are cold and you panic. One day they praise you and you feel good. Another day they misunderstand you and your whole spirit becomes restless. This is not freedom. This is living as a servant to minds you cannot control. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of our suffering comes from clinging. And one of the most hidden forms of clinging is clinging to a clean image. You may not be clinging to money, status, or possessions, but you may be clinging to the need to be seen as kind, good, loyal, mature, innocent, fair, and right. That clinging feels noble because nobody wants to be seen wrongly. But if you cannot let people think wrongly without losing yourself, then their opinion has become a chain. The chain may be invisible, but you feel it. You feel it when one careless comment ruins your day. You feel it when one person's judgment makes you question your whole character. You feel it when you replay conversations at night, creating better answers to accusations that already passed. You feel it when you want to send a long message just to make sure they do not think badly of you. You feel it when your body becomes tense because someone has the wrong story, and you believe you cannot rest until you correct it. But what if you could rest anyway? What if peace did not require everyone's mind to be corrected first? What if you could let someone carry a false version of you without bending your whole life around it? What if you could allow misunderstanding to exist outside you without inviting it to live inside you? This is not easy, but it is one of the deepest forms of inner freedom. Letting people think what they want does not mean truth no longer matters. It does not mean you become careless with your name, your character, or your relationships. It does not mean you allow harmful lies to damage serious parts of your life without action. There are moments when truth must be spoken, especially when silence would allow real harm, injustice, or confusion to grow. But not every wrong opinion is a crisis. Not every false thought deserves your energy. Not every person has earned the right to receive your correction. Some misunderstandings are not worth the peace they will cost you to fix. This is where discernment returns. You ask, is correcting this necessary, or is my ego just uncomfortable? You ask, will this conversation bring clarity, or will it drag me back into suffering? You ask, is this person capable of receiving truth, or are they committed to their version? You ask, am I speaking from wisdom, or am I trying to control how I am seen? These questions slow you down. They stop you from reacting like every opinion is an emergency, because many times the urge to correct is not really about truth. It is about fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of being judged, fear that if you do not speak now, the lie will become permanent, fear that people will believe the worst, fear that your goodness will disappear if no one defends it. But your goodness does not disappear because someone refuses to see it. The sun does not stop being the sun because a person closes the curtain. A clean heart does not become dirty because someone speaks from confusion. Your truth does not become false because someone lacks the maturity to hold it. Their view is their view. Your being is your being. Do not confuse the two. There is a strong difference between being responsible for your actions and being responsible for everyone's interpretation of your actions. You are responsible for your intention, your speech, your choices, your honesty, and your repair when you cause harm. But you are not responsible for every story someone creates after your truth leaves your mouth. You are not responsible for the drama people add to your boundary. You are not responsible for the bitterness they attach to your growth. You are not responsible for the meaning they invent when your peace no longer serves their comfort. Some people will misunderstand you because they do not have enough information. Some will misunderstand you because they have too much pride. Some will misunderstand you because they are listening through pain. Some will misunderstand you because they need someone to blame. Some will misunderstand you because they never really knew you. They only knew the role you played in their life. And when you stop playing that role, they do not know what to call you except difficult. Let them struggle with the new language of your freedom. You do not have to rush to translate yourself for everyone. At this age, you can allow people to be confused. You can allow people to be uncomfortable. You can allow people to have questions that you do not answer. You can allow someone to say, "I do not understand you anymore," and not treat it like a command to explain. Sometimes their confusion is simply the space between who they expected you to remain and who you are becoming. When a person is used to your old patterns, your healing may look strange. If they are used to you overgiving, your balance may look selfish. If they are used to you chasing, your stillness may look prideful. If they are used to you apologizing first, your silence may look cold. If they are used to you accepting disrespect, your boundary may look like rebellion. But the problem is not always your change. Sometimes the problem is their attachment to the version of you that cost you your peace. This is why letting them think what they want becomes a spiritual practice. It teaches you not to cling to being understood. It teaches you not to worship reputation. It teaches you not to let every opinion disturb your inner stillness. It teaches you to act from truth and release the fruit of action. You do what is wise. You speak when needed. You repair what is yours. Then you let go. Letting go here does not mean you feel nothing. You may still feel hurt. You may still feel the sting of being misread. You may still feel sadness when someone you cared about believes a smaller version of you. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become stone. It asks you to stop building a house inside the wound. Let the feeling pass through you. Do not turn it into a mission to control another person's mind. This is one of the hardest lessons. You can be hurt and still not react. You can feel misunderstood and still not explain. You can feel accused and still not defend. You can feel the heat rise inside you and still choose not to throw more wood into the fire. That pause is not weakness. That pause is mastery. A person who can be provoked into endless defense is still being controlled by the provoker. A person who cannot bear misunderstanding is still tied to the crowd. But a person who can stand calmly while another person holds a false opinion has found something deeper than approval. They have found inner ground. Inner ground is the place inside you that does not move every time someone speaks. It is the part of you that knows your own effort, your own pain, your own growth, and your own intention. It is not loud. It does not need to convince. It does not need to gather supporters. It simply stands. The more you return to this place, the less you are pulled apart by outside voices. This does not happen overnight. If you have spent years caring deeply about what people think, letting them think what they want may feel almost impossible at first. Your mind will want to rehearse replies. Your hand may want to pick up the phone. Your heart may feel restless until the story is corrected. Be patient with yourself. You are not only changing a behavior, you are changing an old survival pattern. Many people learned early that being misunderstood was dangerous. Maybe it led to punishment. Maybe it led to rejection. Maybe it led to being blamed for things you did not do. Maybe it led to love being withdrawn. So now, whenever someone misunderstands you, your body reacts like danger has returned. You feel urgent. You feel desperate. You feel the need to fix it immediately. This is not foolish. It is learned fear. But the older, wiser part of you can now say, I am safe enough to let this pass. I do not have to correct every mind to protect my life. I can choose when to speak and when to remain still. That is healing. There is a deep dignity in not chasing your image. When people speak wrongly about you, and you do not rush into panic, you are not agreeing with them. You are simply refusing to let their misunderstanding become the center of your life. You are saying through your calm, my peace is not available for every rumor, every judgment, every careless opinion, every emotional misunderstanding. That kind of dignity cannot be faked. It grows from knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is essential. If you do not know yourself, other people's opinions will feel like mirrors. They call you selfish, and you fear they may be right. They call you cold, and you collapse. They call you difficult, and you lose sleep. But when you have spent time with your own heart, when you have looked honestly at your motives, when you have admitted your flaws without hating yourself, when you have repaired what needed repair, outside opinions lose some of their power. They become information, not identity. You can hear criticism and ask, is there truth here? If there is, you learn. If there is not, you release. You do not need to swallow every word. You do not need to spit every word back. You can let it pass through wisdom. This is a balanced path. Some people let others think what they want because they are avoiding growth. They say, "I do not care what anyone thinks," but they use that as a shield against accountability. That is not freedom. That is avoidance. Real freedom can listen without becoming enslaved. It can consider feedback without collapsing. It can apologize without losing dignity. It can reject false judgment without becoming hateful. So, when someone misunderstands you, do not rush. First, come back to yourself. Breathe. Ask whether there is anything you need to own. If there is, own it simply. If there is nothing to own, release the need to argue. This is how you remain honest without becoming trapped. There are also moments when time becomes the only explanation. Some truths reveal themselves slowly. You may not need to correct every false idea today. Your consistency will speak. Your character will speak. Your peace will speak. Your actions over time will speak. People who truly want truth will eventually see more clearly. People who do not want truth will keep twisting even when evidence stands in front of them. Let time separate the honest from the stubborn. There is a reason nature does not rush to defend itself. A tree does not argue with the person who says it is dead in winter. It waits. In its season, leaves return. A river does not explain its path to every stone. It keeps flowing. The moon does not defend itself when clouds hide it. It remains. There is wisdom in this. Not everything true needs immediate defense. Some truth is best revealed by steady being. Your life can become like that. Steady, quiet, clear. You do not need to run after every person saying, "Please see me correctly." You continue living in a way that matches your values. You continue choosing peace. You continue acting with care. You continue growing. You continue becoming. And those who have eyes to see will see. Those who are determined not to see will not. Every time you chase a misunderstanding, you spend life force. Every time you argue with a false version of you, you give it attention. Every time you defend yourself to someone who is not listening, you weaken your own peace. The cost is not only emotional, it affects your body, your sleep, your focus, your joy. You cannot keep pouring energy into other people's opinions and still have enough left to build the life your spirit needs. At this age, you must become careful with your energy. Not stingy, careful. You can give your words where they can heal. You can give your time where it is respected. You can give explanations where there is sincere listening. But you do not throw your energy into every open mouth that speaks your name wrongly. One of the quietest signs of maturity is the ability to say, "They can think that," not with bitterness, not with hidden rage, not with the secret hope that they suffer for it. Just calm acceptance. They can think that. They can think you left because you stopped caring. You know how long you tried. They can think you are proud. You know how deeply you had to humble yourself to choose peace. They can think you are cold. You know how much feeling you carried before you became still. They can think you changed for no reason. You know the reasons, even if they never hear them. This sentence returns power to you. They can think that. It does not mean their thought is true. It means their thought is not your prison. That is the quiet strength of letting people think what they want. It is not a weak surrender. It is a strong release. It is the moment you stop chasing your reflection in every person's mind. It is the moment you stop begging wrong opinions to become gentle. It is the moment you stop treating misunderstanding as a command to defend yourself. It is the moment you understand that your peace is not waiting for anyone's approval. At this age, allow yourself to be free in this way. Free from chasing, free from correcting, free from proving, free from the need to be seen perfectly, free from the burden of managing every version of you that exists in the minds of others. Let your truth live in your actions. Let your peace live in your body. Let your wisdom live in your choices. Let your life speak calmly without running after every ear. And when the old urge rises again, when you feel the need to explain, defend, correct, and make them understand, pause, breathe. Remember who you are. Remember what you have learned. Remember that a wrong opinion is not a sentence unless you make it one. Remember that not every mind is a home for your truth. Remember that you can be misunderstood and still be whole. At this age, you no longer owe your peace to people's opinions. You no longer owe your energy to every false version of you. You no longer owe your breath to every careless judgment. Let them think what they want. Let your soul remain free. And if you have listened this far, let this truth settle gently in your heart. At this age, you no longer have to live as if your peace needs approval. You no longer have to defend your silence, explain your distance, perform your goodness, prove your loyalty, or open your full story to people who only came to question it. You no longer have to stand in emotional courtrooms, begging unfair judges to understand your motives. You no longer have to correct every false version of you, answer every accusation, or keep bleeding just to be seen as kind. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that freedom does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes freedom arrives as a quiet no. Sometimes it arrives as a closed door. Sometimes it arrives as a calm breath before you choose not to react. Sometimes it arrives when you stop explaining pain to people who keep causing it. Sometimes it arrives when you finally understand that your boundaries do not need a beautiful speech. Your healing does not need an audience. Your growth does not need announcement, and your peace does not need permission. The right people will not require endless reports before they respect your heart. The wrong people may call your peace selfish, your silence rude, your distance pride, and your boundaries cold. Let them. You are not here to keep proving your soul to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. You are here to live with awareness, compassion, clarity, and calm. You are here to speak when wisdom calls you to speak, and to be silent when silence protects what is sacred. You are here to walk away without hatred, to love without losing yourself, and to finally live without needing permission to be at peace. So from this moment, stop carrying explanations that only make you tired. Stop reopening wounds for people who are not gentle with your story. Stop shrinking your truth so others can stay comfortable. Let your actions speak. Let your character speak. Let your peace speak. And when your heart feels tempted to defend itself again, remember this. You do not owe everyone access to the deepest rooms of your life. If this message touched something in you, write in the comments, "I choose peace without explanation." Let those words be your small declaration of freedom today. And if there is one explanation you are finally ready to stop giving, share it in the comments too. Someone reading it may find the courage to free themselves. If you want more calm, honest, and soul-opening wisdom like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Your peace deserves a place to keep growing.